Okay,
Good
you're all
evening.
set.
Okay, thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Finance and Claims Committee of the Common Council for Thursday, April 14th, 2022 at 7:00 p.m. We'll begin the meeting with the roll call of the Finance and Claims Committee. Councilmember David Hooverman.
Present.
Councilmember Tom Keegan.
Here.
Councilmember John Kites.
Here.
Councilmember Jen McMurr.
Here.
Councilmember Nora Nagelsi Eitner. I see she's here. Council.
Here.
Thank you.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Councilmember Diana Revolus.
Here.
Thank you. And Greg Burnett. So we have a full committee present. As it relates to the agenda, we're going to move two items around. So as you look at your agenda, the current items number 10 and 11 will become items number 8 and 9. So we will move those two items up in the agenda, and then everything else will continue as printed. So we're just making a slight modification in two items. So item 3 is public participation. We did not receive any emails to come in for the committee. Do we have anyone who has signed on?
Yes.
Titsme, who has their hand raised?
Yes, we have one attendee, Diane Loricella, has her hand raised.
Okay, if you can join Diane to the panel. And hello, Diane, can you hear us?
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me? I don't know if you can see me.
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
All right.
So
Thank you
please,
very much.
Right, you have 3 minutes for your comments.
Right. While I was waiting for some holiday guests, I thought I would jump on this call, all the important work that this committee does. I had time to look at much of the backup documents, and I thank you all for having those with the agendas. I wish more people would come to these meetings. You do such great work. Anyway, in looking at the agenda items, just wanted to pose the ARPA funds, which we're so thankful for, of course, contain many really great initiatives. Yay and thumbs up, double thumbs up on things like I don't know now if it's item 9, which is the DPW portion. I think that's it. The green infrastructure, citywide, coastal resilience, sidewalks, tree planting. And then the next one, I think with having to do with public health. And of course, economic and community development has really amazing ideas. I am a big proponent of a climate action plan that many of you advocated for. I think it's, there are two things that I would like this committee to think about and maybe even add, because these ARPA funds are, of course, finite. And there are some things that we really need to move the ball forward. And while we are going to do a climate action plan, I think we also need to do and resiliency plan for coastal, which includes living shorelines. I think we need to do a resilient building energy plan, which would include looking at microgrids so that when and if the power goes down, our sewage treatment plant can maybe use a fuel cell. These are things that I had hoped to do many years ago, and they did not come to fruition or just to put out on the table. The second thing, and I know my time is coming up, is very important to have ventilation, use the ARPA funds for ventilation, but not just the school ARPA funds that I think will be looking at ventilation of our schools, also ventilation repair and replacement of our other public buildings. I do think we need to have a facilities plan sooner rather than later for all of the other buildings that we manage that are not a MERV 13 filter just doesn't cut it. when you don't have the proper ventilation. And of course, this is related to COVID protection. So with that, again, I think we need to look at thinking about and even throwing it on this list, this shopping list, this Christmas list, so to speak, ventilation of our other public buildings and our school buildings, and also money for a public building facilities plan that looks at resilient energy plan. Our climate action plan will touch on it, but we need to really drill down now to see where we can reduce the amount of energy we're using and replace it with electrons that we put together with solar, geothermal, and wind. Happy Ramadan, happy Passover, and happy Easter to you all.
Thank you, Diane. The same to you. Appreciate your comments. Is there anyone else who has their hand raised who wishes to speak?
There is nobody else.
Okay, with that, we'll close public participation and move on to item number 4, which is approval of the minutes of the Finance Committee meeting from March 10th, 2022. Do we have a motion? I see Councilperson Diana Revelus's hand is up. Thank you, Diane. Are there any corrections, deletions, changes to the minutes? Okay, hearing, seeing none, all those in favor of approval of the minutes show by the sign of raising your hand. And John and Nora, should I assume that's a yes?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, great. So it's unanimous. The minutes are approved. So we'll move on to items 5, 6, and 7. Which is item 5 is the Claims Committee report of as of April 14th, 2022. And then we'll roll right into the narrative for the tax collection dated April 7th, 2022, and the monthly tax collectors report dated March 2022. And we have our assistant tax collector, Palermo, with us today, who will give us the update as while Lisa is on a well-deserved vacation.
Yeah,
Hello, Al.
she's in sunny Aruba.
Ah,
The rest of us are toiling away here, but that's good. She's earned it. So I'm not 100% sure on how she's handled this in the past. I could run through the highlights. Essentially, we are a bit ahead of last year on our collections. A lot of that is attributed to the work that we did with the tax sale. We started by sending out about almost 250 letters and to accounts that met our criteria of delinquency. And Monday is April 18th, which is 6 months after the sale. And there are 5 properties left that have not paid to get out. One of them is a vacant lot, so there are 4 other properties. And one of those actually that we had a last minute call from them trying to get stuff together. So that one may actually redeem. So, the whole goal is not to, transfer properties. It's to collect the taxes. And, a lot of people, they needed a little prodding to, they just can't sit there and let things get out of hand. And a lot of people are better off because, they were kind of left to have to do something rather than put stuff off. So, the goal, we brought in almost 9.4 or a little bit more than 9.4 $1 million in funds on all the accounts that were those 250 accounts between interest, taxes, and fees, current year, prior year. And some of the other stuff we've been doing lately is issuing some alias tax warrants for the marshal, working on personal property. We are finding that a lot of businesses, I don't think this is a surprise to anyone, that may have been on the tax rolls from 20 are no longer there. I don't think that, and a lot of them are not necessarily like big, big companies, but, smaller businesses that, they've come and gone. So, and we're kind of dealing with that right now with the marshal. He's going out and, he'll be like, I went to, half a dozen places and none of these businesses are there anymore. Might talk to a landlord or a neighboring business and they've been out for a little while. So, but we're dealing with that, as best we can. I don't know if anyone has any questions. There's no special requests this month. It's, a typical month for us without any real big items. There's nothing outstanding as far as the refund agenda is. As far as I'm concerned, it's just more normal than anything. So.
Right. When we look at item 5 for the claims report, there's no item over $10,000. So that's primarily for information only. So there's no formal vote on that. And as far as the narrative and monthly tax collectors report, you've just covered those. So are there any questions, comments from any committee members as it relates to the claims committee report, narrative, or tax collectors report? Okay, hearing, seeing none. I do see that we're at 98.82%. So hopefully we're coming close on that key 99% that we always aspire to.
Yeah, at this point in April, we might be there. So who the heck knows? So
exactly. Great. Well, thank you, Al, for the update.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Have a good holiday, everyone.
Great. Thank you.
Bye now.
We will now move on. As I mentioned at the beginning, that item, the next item we'll cover will be the old item 10 and 11, which are now items 8 and 9. And so item 8 reads as follows: authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to submit an application to the state of Connecticut for grant funds provided under the state of Connecticut's Local Capital Improvement Fund for Local Capital Improvement Program for the amount of $684,140. That is our 2022 entitlement. And we have Chief of Public Works and Operations, Anthony Carr, with us, as well as, Vanessa, I'm sorry. Our principal engineer is also presenting these two items.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. So we've been before this committee in the past. This is our annual funding, which basically is from the Connecticut DOT, and it's also called LOTSIP, or LOCIP, I should say, LOCIP. And this is for all improvements within the roadway, within the right-of-way, related to curb, sidewalk, pavement, etc. So this year, in 2021, I should say, calendar year, we did complete approximately 29 roads, which you'll see in your backup for the packet. And then also in 2022, we're planning to pave another 28 roads, or mill and resurface, or reclaim, or reconstruct, etc. So there'll be a total of approximately 47 roads that will be improved. Again, 29 road segments from 2021 and 28 that are planned for calendar year 2022. The combined total of each calendar year is approximately $4.3 million. And then again, that's noted in the packet, and that's in the chart for each calendar year. So that's important to know. That's not the fiscal year, but it is the calendar year. But again, this funding is given to us yearly. The amounts are generally the same, typically ranging in the $650,000 value. Sometimes they go a little bit higher or lower, depending on the economy. But these are the road segments in 2021 that were completed, and the road segments that you see in 2022 are the ones that are planned. Of course, the plans are subject to change. For example, if there's utility work that was unforeseen or maybe went past or went later in schedule than originally anticipated from, let's say, First Taxing Water District or the or Eversource. But the roads that you see are generally what will be done for 2022 and was completed in 2021. Vanessa, if I missed anything or you'd like to add anything, please feel free.
No,
I'm just
I think we're good.
I'm just sharing the screen to show everyone the amount. I'm sorry, Vanessa, go ahead.
No, I have nothing to add. I think that Anthony covered it very well.
Am I looking at the right screen here? No.
That looks like it's for the muted.
Yeah, yes. If you go to the second block, Mr. Chairman, Norwalk is right in the middle. Right there. You were there before. The other page. Yeah, go up. Right there.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So as you stated, this entitlement is in line with what we've been receiving in the recent years. So it hasn't gone down, it hasn't gone up by a lot, but it's been consistent.
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great. Any questions as it relates to the LoCIP entitlement for Norwalk? Okay, do we have a motion to approve this authorization? Councilperson McMurray, thank you. If there's no other questions, all those in favor show by the sign of raising your hand.
Aye.
And John's aye, and Nora's an aye, so it's unanimous. Thank you. So this authorization is approved, and we will move this to the full council for approval at the next council meeting on Tuesday, April 26th. Great. So now this moves us to the next item, which is the new item 9. And this item is the first of several requests for allocation of the ARPA dollars, the American Rescue Plan Act funds that Norwalk has received. And before I read the resolution, the format that we've asked each department to share with us is to provide a short narrative of how the funds are going to be used. And we're also showing the account number. As these projects comes forward, we are allocating an account number to keep a standard tracking of each item and the amount associated with that particular activity, along with the dollar amount. We have to provide an update to the federal government, meaning we, being the city of Norwalk, of every dollar that we spend related to ARPA funding. And what we will do is provide a quarterly update to this committee, as well as to the full council, of all of the ARPA dollars that are used, how they're being used, et cetera. One of the things that I would like suggest that each committee also share with us is that if there's any hiring associated with any use of the ARPA dollars, that be identified, because any hiring would be subject to the length of the grant that is provided. And we would want to know if we're adding quarter, half, or full FTE as a result of any of the ARPA work so that once the grant is exhausted, we have some type of tracking in terms of how are we going to address the headcount. I'll pause at this time and see if our Chief Financial Officer, Henry Dackwitz, has any additional comments related to the ARPA funding.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you covered it well. I would just explain our methodology. We want to make sure, as we were going through the budget process, many items popped up and people would say, oh, we could just pay for this with ARPA money. So our controller, Chitsime Lamb, has kept track of the funds that we've been awarded. Half of the funds have already been received and are segregated into a separate fund for ARPA funds. We expect the second half of those funds in the next 2 months. We then internally were talking about how we were going to spend those monies. And we allocated them to different chiefs who then allocated them into different projects. And the concept was that as we move forward, that we bring these projects to the Finance Committee and then the full council so that you understand what we're doing and how we're doing. Yes, there is a quarterly reporting process with the US Treasury. And what we have to do is explain how we've used the money and where is it going. One of the things we established early on is that the US Treasury established very strict guidelines, numbered on acceptable types of projects. So we started off by saying whatever allocations we're making to projects have to fit in those categories and have to be specified upfront. That way, when we do our reporting, it shouldn't be a problem. Here's how we spent the money. This is the vendor or the outside agency or a subcontractor. Here's the purpose and how it fits in with the US Treasury. So we have another deadline, April 30th for the quarter, January through March. And the process is designed so that A, we don't over allocate, that people don't say we're going to use ARPA money and we don't have any more. And then as projects get approved, Chitsime will move them to an account as Greg specified, just like a capital project. The approval of a project with a certain amount of money gives it its budget. And then as the purchase orders and invoices come through, they will be reductions of that authorized amount. And no one will be allowed to spend more than that authorized amount. So we're making sure on a couple of levels that we don't overspend. And that secondly, we are controlling to ensure that the payments are made for the purposes that ARPA allows. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. So with that, we'll move on to item 9, which the resolution reads as follows: requesting for various Department of Public Works public improvement projects aggregating in the amount of $9,759,820 from the ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act Fund. And I won't read the account numbers, but we have account number noted for Dreamy Hollow Bets, account number noted for Glennington Street Storm Sewer, account number noted for Glenwood Avenue Storm Sewer, account number noted for Lockwood Lane Health, account number noted for General Drainage, various city, account number noted for Stormwater Management Plan, account number noted for Coastal Resiliency Citywide, account number noted for Tree Planting DPW Citywide, and account number noted for Green Infrastructure Citywide. Do we have a motion to move on this resolution? Councilperson Revelous, thank you. And Chief Carr, I believe you
Yes.
will lead the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as the CFO correctly noted, as well as yourself, Mr. Chairman, the DPW is respectfully requesting approximately $9.76 million of ARPA funding to be allocated to existing and even new DPW capital project accounts. So just to give a quick overview, on page 2 of our memorandum, in that table, there's 9 activities listed. So think of an activity as a task. So of those 9 activities, there are 6 capital projects that are included on that table. Of those 6 projects, 4 capital projects are existing and 2 are new. And the 2 new projects are the coastal resiliency and the green infrastructure projects. Again, this is all noted in the memorandum, but just to kind of give a high level overview. So there's 9 activities divvied up between 6 capital projects. Again, because some of those activities, there's multiple activities within one capital project, right? So there's several drainage projects. So that accounts for the overlap in the different projects. These capital projects are already approved by the Common Council, especially the newer projects, the coastal resiliency and the green infrastructure, which we just passed the other night. But this funding request, again, the city engineer and the CFO and the finance department, the comptroller, purchasing agent did a fantastic job of working together to keep our spending authorized and organized. So we can't go past the 9.76. So the table on page 2 of our memorandum shows the allocation between each of the projects, which include different initiatives, but just to name a few, the Dreamy Hollow, Bettsbrook drainage improvement project. There's the Lockwood and Buckingham drainage improvements as well. Glendenning Street in between Old Lantern and East Rocks. Glenwood, which is next to Clinton Avenue. So there's several flood mitigation projects, which our department will be briefing the full Common Council later this month on flood mitigation. But not to digress, this documentation that we've included in your backup, Mr. Chairman and committee, shows all the like Dreamy Hollow, for example. That project alone accounts for approximately $7 million of the 9.76. So most of that money, or that funding, I should say, is being allocated towards the construction of the drainage improvements and the flood mitigation improvements, and also the construction administration, which will be administered by the consultant, Woodard and Curran Engineering, PC. So it's construction administration and construction. That is the bulk of the improvements. And like I said, the other projects that are included, I believe there's 4 flood mitigation projects, 3 stormwater projects, meaning the general drainage, the stormwater management plan, and even green infrastructure are considered stormwater projects, not necessarily flood mitigation. And then there's the tree project, and then there's also coastal resiliency, which fall into the sustainability category. So we're just trying to show the committee, as well as the CFO and other departments involved, what projects we're looking to allocate and apply the ARPA funding for. Vanessa did a fantastic job of working with the purchasing agent and also the finance department to obtain those ARPA codes, Mr. Chairman, which I know that you noted, but didn't read, but they begin with ADP, W01. There's all different account numbers which apply to each different task. So there's 9 tasks in that table. Some of those tasks do have the same funding source, but they all have different ARPA numbers to keep everything organized. So every task has a different ARPA account. And that's how the finance department and the CFO decided working with the administration was the best way to track the spending, because as you can imagine, when there's a lot of departments with a lot of tasks, with a lot of projects, things can get a bit unorganized if it's not wrangled in from the beginning. So I'd like to thank the CFO for his help. Sharon Connors, Chitsame did a fantastic job. And Vanessa, thank you very much for helping keep everything in line. Vanessa, if there's anything else that you'd like to add, please feel free to do so. That's all.
Thank you, Anthony. I just have a couple of comments. Mr. Chairman, you asked in the beginning if we're considering hiring anyone to do those projects. We are not. We're going to be able to do just with regular engineer consultants, particularly when we have those designs. And also all the construction will be overseen by our own staff. So we are not planning to add more staff to be able to do any of those 9 projects that are being presented in front of you. The other thing that I want to mention to you is that besides going in front of your committee and the full Common Council for ARPA money, each of these projects also go in front of the DPW committee for approval of the project itself. So we have, some of them already went through it. So Dreamy Hollow, Glending, Glenwood, Lockwood Lane, those are all projects that have been on the pipe and they're just waiting for the funds to be approved so we can start them. But DPW committee gets a whole presentation about what was the project, who was the contractor and all that, and also Common Council already approved them. So the only thing that was missing to close the link was really the assigned account, because now we're using an ARPA account and not a capital funded account. Some others we haven't already started the project. We were waiting, and those would be more the coastal resilience and the green infrastructure. General drainage is just an account where we buy some of our material to do our regular drainage at work. And the tree planting also has already been awarded is Olmsted that got the contract, I believe, end of last year. And we are just expanding on that program because we already have good prices for those trees.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Hoovman, you have your hand up for a question?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Burnett. I have a couple of questions. One is, some of these are existing projects that have been have they been appropriated already for or bonded for, Henry? And are we offsetting the bonding on those?
No,
They have not.
No, none of them. What we've done is Anthony has been teeing these up, saying we want to be able, when we have the appropriate capital funds, to have the flood mitigation projects. We then got the ARPA money and said, okay, if we give you X millions of dollars from ARPA, what would you work on? And they had a whole list. Some might have been designed, some might have been ready to go, but we had not bonded them. And we're using these funds in lieu of borrowing money.
Okay, great. The next question I have is, are we going to find out what green infrastructure various citywide locations is? Are we going to get specificity as to what a project like that is as it comes through the various committees?
You're gonna see that in front of Common Council. It goes in front of DPW committee because it would be a DPW project. Mr. Hoovman, what we are doing is that is just a little bit on standby because there is a grant that we are applying in conjunction with planning and zoning for coastal resilience project that we are waiting if we're gonna obtain. If we do obtain that study, we're gonna use that money to do a study on the other parts of the city. If we do not, we're going to use that one to be a little more broader. Another option that we are considering is, depending on the time of the study, when that comes out, we may use this money to do some of the projects that we can fund under that money that will be allocated. So we are not planning to spend this right away. We're planning to spend that within a few months because we're seeing if we can get this grant for this RFP that is being put out by an agency. In regards to the green infrastructure, what we are considering doing with that amount of money is to add some green infrastructure projects in already existing areas in town that we can do. So it's not a major project. For instance, we have a bigger green infrastructure project running under Rex and Parks, where we're adding some green infrastructure at Calf Pasture Beach. That one is a capital funded project that will be done hopefully this June. We should be putting out to bid. This one in particularly is to add some green infrastructures within some existing areas of the city. So for instance, maybe when we add a sidewalk in a potential street, maybe we would considering adding some green infrastructure on that street. Maybe one of those islands that we see in the middle of the road, we would design those one to work as a green infrastructure to improve drainage and quality of water. So that's what we're looking at on those.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this right, then all we're doing is, well, I mean, you have some things that are very specific and some that are quite general. So the general things are, they're gonna come back in front of a committee and come back to the Common Council to be voted on then specifically, because it'll be a separate project by that point. Is that how the structure of this is working?
Yes. So what
Okay.
you guys are approving is you're approving the use of the money for the projects that we are presenting. On top of that, because it's a DPW project, we still go in front of the Public Works Committee, and we tell them that is ARPA funded if they want to approve the project itself. That's where they get the full explanation about it.
Okay, well, it seems like we've created a lot of layers, but I'm glad we're doing it. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Councilmember Nora Nijelski-Eichner.
Thank you, Councilmember Burnett. And to Councilmember Hubelman's point, I recognize that this is sort of belts and suspenders and extra layers, but as the CFO referenced, as you referenced, Greg, as we talked about on Tuesday night, a lot of this is about making sure that we are being very careful with our federal funds and we are not running into issues that some of the neighboring towns have. So I would appreciate for the record if you, Mr. Carr or you, Vanessa, could state for us exactly what categories of the allowable ARPA expenses these fall under, just so that we can again be assured that we have, as I'm sure you have, done all of our due diligence and these are appropriate approved uses for these funds.
Sure, I can tell you that actually for us, it's very easy. Everything is under the same category, that is the 5.6 clean water, stormwater.
One category, Councilwoman.
Terrific, thank you. I just wanted to have it on the record. I really appreciate that.
Great. Any other questions, comments related to this resolution? Okay, hearing, seeing none. All those in favor, show by the sign of raising your hand.
Aye.
And John's an aye.
Aye.
And Nora is an aye. Okay, it's unanimous. Very good. Thank you. We will move this item, a resolution, to the full council on Tuesday, April 26th for final approval. And then our comptroller will have it in the document for spending as the expenses and items to be paid come through.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Sure. You too. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you.
So this now moves us into, as it relates to the agenda, we now go to item 10, the new item 10, which is to receive the Oak Hills Authority monthly financial statements for January and February 2022. And we have on the line with us Carl Dickens from Oak Hills Park Authority. Hello, Carl.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. And hopefully everybody can hear me okay, or am I on mute? I don't think that I am. I always look forward to these. The chairman, Mr. De Palma, is on business and not able to make this meeting. So as vice chairs do, I step in. So we are open for business. That's good. We have also been fortunate enough with the revenue that we have generated over the past, pardon me, last year, to start putting some much needed money back into the park and the golf course, because for years it hasn't been able to do that. But we have finished all of the cart paths. So we have full cart paths at the course now, which we did that because we knew that at some point we were going to be in a situation to where we could generate more revenue by being able to let carts out on rainy days or days that might be suspect. And our superintendent didn't want carts out onto the fairways, which can cause some damage and ruts. We anticipate that extra cart pathing going from tee box to green is probably going to bring us in somewhere around $30,000 a year extra, which is over and above the cart fees and the green fees. So that's good. All that work has been done, plus work on the superintendent's house, which was much needed because there were many repairs that have gone undone there for quite some time. We've been able to get all that done, and it came in actually a little under budget, I believe, at $272,000. So those are some improvements that we have. And it's actually paid off this year because we've been open for golf so off and on for about the past 3 to 4 weeks. And of course, as we all know, we've had a lot of rain recently. And so a lot of the fairways and things are soft, but we've been able to put the carts out, make some extra money, and keep the facility looking, very, very well. As of this date, we have $194,000 that's in the bank, which is very nice to have at this time of the year. Again, as I mentioned the last time I appeared before this group, we get our annual loan that we take out that we haven't had to touch yet, and we don't anticipate that since we're now open for business and off and running with the golf revenue. We have been able to pay back to the city. I think it is $85,000. No, it's more than that. $172,000 back in the debt repayments that we needed to pay to the city. We paid that since July of 2020. So in the fiscal year, year to year, we've been able to do that, whereas we all know for a long time we weren't able to pay any of that back. Season passes are done now. We capped those out at 52. And the good thing is that, at least to my knowledge, we have not had any major complaints about people being able to get tee times at this point. Now, as the weather gets better and the tee sheets fill up a bit more, that may change. But as of right now, we've not had any situations with that at all. We are also going to start paying back, and I think we've already cut some in the check that the BET brought up to us about an agreement that we signed back 2-3 years ago about paying only on revenue rounds. We've expanded that now to where we're paying money back to the city, not only on revenue rounds, but also on season passes that were purchased, and also any barter that is brought in. And the only barter we do is with Golf Now, and they supply us with their point of sale computer software and the terminals that we use in order to book tee times. That's been a little interesting. Maybe some of you have heard it over the past couple of months, because it's the old easy system that went away, but now Golf Now is using a new name and brought in this new stuff. We've had some hiccups with people not being able to get online and make a tee time. That's being worked on. They have now put one of their super techs on it to do it. I'm still pushing to get a super tech to come to Norwalk to the golf course and be live and on the scene. So far, they've done everything either remotely or on a telephone. So that's been one little issue that we've had. The restaurant's been open now for a little over a month. We're going to open up the halfway house this weekend, and we will also open up the traveling beverage cart this weekend as well, weather permitting, of course. We're working on some marketing ideas and marketing campaigns to drive more people into the restaurant. It seems that when there's a night and there's music there, which is not really us, but Don, who is the manager of the food and beverage, when there's live music, the place is packed. In the evening, when there's not live music, not so much. And we're still trying to educate the golfers that, before you just get finished playing golf, throw your bag in the trunk of your car, or the back of your SUV, and take off, to spend a little time at the golf course and, on food, beverage, that sort of thing. Because the facility is, if you haven't been there, and I think you all were there on the invite, stop by because it's very good and the food's very good. And of course, we'll start generating revenue very nicely from the halfway house once that's open. That generated a lot of money last year, which was really the only facility that we had open at the course last year. So that's really where we're at. We're in good shape. We are looking for members to join OPA. And Mr. Chairman, I don't know what the procedure that you guys would do to get those, but if any of you want to field the resumes from anyone in your districts, or you know of anybody, or anybody that you'd like to get on a board, please either, I think in the past, Councilman Keegan was handling some of this. Either send them to him and he'll forward to me, or send them to me directly. And, we'll take a look and see what the proper fits are. You don't have to be a golfer to be on board. We have also made, because a lot of people didn't know it, we have an excellent tennis facility, and we put money into that as well. And that's being improved all the time. So everything is moving forward very nicely right now at the Oak Hills facility.
Great. Thank you for the update. Any questions or comments related to Oak Hills? Yes, Councilmember Hooverman.
Thank you, Chairman Burnett. Carl, how many positions are open on the board right now?
We've got one member that's terming out and cannot be on again for the 2-year window before you can reapply. Chairman De Palma's first 3 years is ending at the end of this calendar year, at the end of June. He has gotten promoted at his company and is traveling like crazy and has a lot of other responsibilities going on right now. He has indicated that he is not going to stand to go again. So there's 2. And Councilman Dutton, we need to talk about reappointing. He filled in for one of the folks that were on the board that resigned because they were no longer living in the city. And because of something that happened years ago, his term when he was appointed wasn't for a full 3-year term. It was just for whatever the length of time was that was left on that term that expired. I know it's a little confusing. And that was all, but it wasn't counted just like 6 months or a year term. It was counted as a full term. But he is eligible to be reappointed, which I would push for very much, to be put into a full 3-year term on the board. So we've got at least, Councilman Hooverman, at least 3 that are up. And it's always good to have, start building a bench as well to get some other folks up.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question on that, Carl. It's always good to have a board that has a diversity of skills and backgrounds. Is there a specific skill set that you think would be advantageous to have added to the Oak Hills board?
Well, finance is always one because it's becoming a bigger job now, and Joe does a great job with that. And then we also have our paid finance person that does a fabulous job, Mark, as well. But anybody that has that sort of business kind of background, because as you all know, we've kind of, in the last 4 or 5 years, we've switched from running it more as a board and this sort of thing to a business, which has resulted in, I think, to some of the good things that's been happening with us. It's always good to have somebody that may be that, like Mr. Dutton, has a background where he was manager of the Yale Club for a long, long time. And then he also filled in for a couple of years in his retirement early days as the manager of Tokenique Club. So somebody with that kind of background, which I'm glad you asked that question, because we are looking for a general manager. And it's not a full-time position that we're looking for. We're looking for somebody that could work 3 to 4 days a week, but that has general manager experience interfacing with a pro, groundskeepers, food and beverage, the public, of course, that sort of thing. That job was a dual job that Don took on when Masterini, when we brought him on board with F&B, but that's a big job, and we wanted him to focus entirely on the food and beverage business.
Councilmember Hooverman.
Yeah, a quick question, Carl. You mentioned before things like the tennis center. What about the nature side? Are we able to get some money to them to do any improvements that they're looking to do with the nature walk that's there? As well as, there's that fountain, the fountain and gardens that are up on the upper level by the parking lot up there. I mean, the repairs to that. Now that the finances are doing a little better, are we able to sort of divert some money into that to make those repairs and spruce those areas up as well?
Yes, and there have been some money that's been diverted that direction to help out with, probably not as much as we want or need, but there's major improvements there. And where you're talking about is really the trailhead by the parking lot where it starts. There's a kiosk up there now. And there's been planning been going on. And as you also know, we have the 5013C Oak Hills donation committee, for lack of a better term. So when people donate money, they donate it into that. And any segment of the organization can apply for some of those funds. And that's been really a lot of the money that's been used by the Nature Committee to make any kind of major improvements or improvements they want. But we have, when they've come and asked for it, the chairman of that committee, when they've made it known that they needed to do something as far as for planning or to buy something and this and that, we've approved those funds.
Councilmember Diana Revelous.
Thank you, Chair. You guys are doing great work. I've asked this question before and it kind of jumped behind what Councilman Huveman said with maybe the hiring. Do you guys have are looking directly to I'm thinking the word like community outreach? I know I asked a while ago, what is Oak Hills doing to inform the community that's not normally knowledgeable of Oak Hills and come and make it a greater connectivity with, just people that are not used to it, haven't done it, haven't facilitated in even seeing golf. I'm just wondering, where is that being focused on in any way with Oak Hills?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, we do have 2 social media sites, Facebook and on a Twitter account. As long as when Mr. Musk takes over, we're able to still use the Twitter account. That's a little humor. We do use that, not to the best extent that we can. It's one of those things with everybody being busy. Lots of times things that should be there don't necessarily get put there quick enough. But we do have a company called 1-to-1 Marketing. It deals with nothing but golf courses. And they do all of our marketing as far as the type of things we need posted around. But we need, and I really do like that question, we really need to get somebody, and we have a board meeting coming up next week, to take over the outreach, public affairs, public marketing. In fact, Councilman Keegan and I had a conversation about this afternoon. To really get that word out. I would also ask each of you in your districts, if you have a newsletter or a marketing letter or whatever you put out into your districts about what the city needs or what's going on, if you don't mind mentioning that would be terrific. And you can certainly use my name and my phone number, and my email to have them reach out to me and we'll respond to them.
That was actually going to be my follow-up. How could we help you? So definitely true. I would love to do so and definitely see more of our families, of our students just trying to get to experience something they might not even know is here. So, and I'm not surprised, Mr. Keegan, that you brought that up as well. So thank you so much. I appreciate the answer.
Now he's got some great ideas. We do work with the grassroots tennis group. And of course, we do, of course, work with the high school golf teams, both of them, McMahon and Norwalk High. And we've been trying to put together a group where we can, we did this last year and it was successful, where we started bringing in, because Darien already had this in place for youth, that we started bringing in that group to play Oak Hills.
Oh, okay.
That's the good and the bad of it. The good is that we do it. The bad is that, you know, we block tea times out during the week so that the kids have time to play. And some of the members don't like that. And well, that's kind of too bad.
You just remind me of one last thing. I'm so sorry to my
Oh, not a
council,
problem.
our colleagues, and to you. Thank you. It's just an idea because of something else we're trying to do with the youth services and Norwalk partnerships, so on and so forth. But we are looking for like our for-profit companies, nonprofit, but our organizations in Norwalk to like give back to our youth and maybe even declare a day where it's just a day that you give to our teens to come in and be able to play for a night once a month or something like that, that might not conflict with your members' time, but give them a sense of their own time. It can also help in marketing, so their families and friends, so on, associates will get to know, hey, I was here, I was at Oak Hills, they offered a teen night, you know what I mean? They connected with our high schools, and then it can get the buzz out. That's just an idea.
No, that's a great idea. And Paul Alexander, who's the pro, also does teaching. And
perfect.
And he's done youth teaching, and he's very good at it from what we hear, for a number of years there. So he loves reaching out to the youth in the area and teaching them. In fact, when you're with him sometimes, you know, I guess it's like any teacher, he'll point out to a player, and I see that young man over there. I mean, you know, he's now a teenager, young man. I showed him how to start playing when he was like 10.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, I always being the smarty that I am, saying, "Oh, well, that's why he plays so bad." But any of those outreach programs, I don't want to take up all your time, but anything like that, feel free to shovel our way, because you know we need ideas and we need to interact with the community. And the more the community knows about us, the more people will come, and the more money we'll make.
True, and I appreciate it. I yield my time. Thank you, guys.
Right. Council Member Tom Keegan.
I think you're on mute.
There you go. Thank you, Chairman Burnett. I have two questions. Carl, the first is the first tee still around? Do we have any connection?
Yes, in fact, we have it. The First Tee organization.
Yeah.
Yes, and we are affiliated with them. Paul's got more information on that than I do, but very much so, yes.
Yeah, just so for my colleagues, it's the First Tee. If you don't know anything about it, they introduce kids that may not be familiar with the game of golf to the game of golf. And
it's a great organization.
Yep. And the second question I have is, any chance of changing the first hole to a par 6? And I'll come off now. Thank you very
much. You'll still get a 7.
Probably an 8. Thank you.
I mean, we can keep moving it up if you'd like, but you know, you and I kid about that. You know, there are par 6s around at different golf courses in the country, but it has something to do with the yardage and this and that, and it's more golf technical than I know. I normally get a 6 there anyway, so I figure I get a par anyhow. But no, good question. Do we have golfers? Before I bug out, do we have golfers on this call?
Hands have gone up. Yes.
And if you
I want to.
Well, I can put you in touch, or you can get directly in touch with Mr. Alexander and set up lessons. So that would be, and he is a good coach. He's a very good coach. But I invite all of you to come and see the facility. The last thing, of course, we're on YouTube, but I'm going to say it anyway. Where the old pro shop used to be, or the old place down by the real First Tee where we used to sign in, we've made some repairs and did different things there, but there really is not much you can do with that building, except we've now had, I think it's 2 or 3 different vendors to come in And there seems to be room enough that we could put in 1 or 2 golf simulators
Oh,
so that people could come in when it's raining, or people that are just starting out, or particularly during the winter months. I mean, there's actually a fireplace in that building. I don't know if it's workable or not, but it is, and we've been told by these people that run the simulators that it's big enough and even tall enough for a backswing to actually use the simulators. So, and maybe we all should go into that business. So I won't reveal these, but the numbers that I've seen on the simulators, whatever you pay for it, they pay for themselves in about 3 months. Not a bad business. Not a bad business. And the way the country's shaping up and what Paul says and everything else is that golf as a whole across the country looks like it's getting teed up again, no pun intended, for a really good year this year. So I see no reason why we won't be part of that.
that would be a great innovative project.
Yes.
I see our budget director, Tom Ellis, has a hand up. You have a comment or question, Tom?
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, Carl, just I'm a bit of a tennis player. I'm a resident as well. I've spent my fair amount of time at Oak Hills, and you had mentioned some improvements and some changes with the tennis facility. As I was just wondering if you could elaborate on those.
Yeah, so if you play the courts much, and Denise Brown is on our committee that is in charge of all tennis, and she's done a wonderful job working with the Kings Highway, who is our vendor. But there's a drainage problem. I think as you stand in that little bit of a parking lot and look at it to the left, the courts to the left. So we're looking at getting that drainage problem fixed. We're also looking at seeing how much it would cost us to build out around there and fix that up for a patio, much like the clubhouse for golf. When you get finished, you want to go into the clubhouse. If you play tennis and you want to stay around for a little while, maybe watch your friends play some before you leave, we're looking to build that out as a patio and also have some food and snacks and probably sport drinks. I mean, I don't see the tennis players like the golfers going into the bar and having a burger and a beer. I mean, they're probably going to have something that's a little more healthy, which I wish I did more often. But yeah, that Tom is a part of what we're looking at. We've been looking at fixing some of the fencing. Very expensive to fix tennis court fencing, even to have it painted or this, but it's you can't really paint them anymore. It's cheaper to get the fence that has that laminate on it, whether it's green or black. So those are some of the improvements we're looking at. And everybody remember Arthur Goldstein?
Yes.
So Art was on the board for a long time.
Mr. Norwalk Tennis.
Mr. Norwalk Tennis. I know Denise is working on this. We're looking to, I think, actually change or not change because that right now, but name the courts after him. And there is, I'll get the exact date and you can get, and you all can be invited. I think it's May 23rd or somewhere in there. We're having a fundraiser kind of luncheon mid-afternoon thing there to raise funds for all that, all for the tennis operation.
Yeah, that's a terrific move. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, he was a good mentor to me when I first got on, and kind of good guy. Missed, very good guy.
Great. Any other comments or questions for Oak Hills? Okay, hearing, seeing none. Thank you, Carl, for the update.
Thank you,
All
Mr.
good
Chairman,
news.
council members. Appreciate it.
Great.
Okay.
We will now move on in the agenda to which is now item 11, which reads as follows. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute the grant assignment certificate SFY 2023, assigning State of Connecticut 13B-38BB Elderly and Disabled Demand Responsive Municipal Grant Program appropriated funds to operations of Transportation Services Coordinating Entity, Norwalk Transit District. Do we have a motion on this item? Council Member Jen McMurray, thank you. And we have with us our Chief of Community Services, Lamont Daniels, along with Mike Pence from the Norwalk Transit District to give us narrative on this item.
Thank you, Chair Burnett. So this is an annual application. I came before this committee last year. Elder House and the Elder House, and the Senior Center are able to leverage the City of Norwalk's funding grant that we provide to them with an additional 50% match from the Connecticut Department of Transportation, which is a state matching grant program that Chair Burnett has shared. This particular match program allows for support for transportation to our seniors, and more specifically, persons with disabilities. Through my department, the City of Norwalk funds the Elder House with $18,000 annually. And we also provide the Norwalk Senior Center historically, and we continue to do $390,000 annually. They are then allowed to document this funding and receive additional funds. Norwalk Public Transit, which is Matt is here, they apply for it on behalf of the Elder House and Norwalk Senior Center, as the nonprofits do not directly apply as recipients. And this is, again, just one of those programs that oftentimes there are match programs, foundations, in this case, the state looks to see for municipalities to put something in the game, as that I often say, and our commitment to our seniors and persons with disability then allows them to leverage, and we're able to draw down additional dollars. Matt, welcome. If you would like to add to that, please do so at this time.
Hey, thanks a lot. No, you covered just about everything I would have mentioned. The only other thing I would add is that there's a little bit more available to us this year than in the past, a couple $1,000s. So it's about just under $71,000 is the grant amount for Norwalk this year.
Great, thank you. So $71,000, that's the dollar amount associated with this grant?
Yeah, it's $70,732 to be exact.
Okay.
But with the mayor's authorization, that would then give me the green light to move forward and apply for these funds as the coordinating entity.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. Do we have any questions, comments related to this authorization? Diana, is that a hand up or? Yes, Diana, Council Member Diana Revolus.
So being a person that has to deal with a disability, just wondering what, if approved, what are the enhancements you would do not only for elders, but for disabled? I'm just wondering how with those advancements that you think of now, maybe you don't know yet, that's okay, but just wondering, I think it just beams my mind because disability doesn't have an age range. So I think when we say elderly and disabled, that people just think that's an older age, but I'm just wondering what is the spectrum of what we're trying to improve for those who are disabled?
Sure, Matt, you may can speak to that more than I, because you're closely, but I believe, is this specific for elderly that are disabled, or is just for the disability community that this match will allow transportation services?
Yeah, so the best I know is it's for elderly and disabled. And
okay.
it does cover mostly operating costs. I don't know if there's any specific enhancements. We are the coordinating entity, so Elder House and the Norwalk Senior Center could probably be best to answer that.
Okay.
But yeah, Lamont, maybe you can add more as well.
Sure. I do know that the Elder House, Councilwoman, and Senior Center works with the Norwalk Public Transit to identify who those individuals are and work in partnership with them to ensure that those services are available.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I guess, like, for example, picking up somebody. Like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
But that's a great question. I can definitely circle back to let you know specifically, is it just the elderly community in the disability realm or just, more broadly? I don't have that answer for you this evening, but I certainly can circle back.
I appreciate that, because just for like a little transparency, although this is another reason why I push nutrition so much, but like, again, there was a time I suffer from multiple sclerosis. There was a time when I needed people to come pick us up from appointments, and how that worked with insurances and our transit. So if it was working towards that, I just wanted you to have the ability to speak to that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Councilwoman.
You're welcome.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions related to this authorization? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of this authorization, show by the raise of hand. Okay, John.
Aye.
Thank you. It's unanimous. So we will move this to the full council at the Tuesday, April 26th meeting for full council approval.
Thank you, everybody, for your support.
Thank you.
Moving on in the agenda, we now move to item 12, which is this is another request for ARPA funding. And the resolution reads as follows: requesting for community service projects aggregating in the amount of $2 million from the ARPA American Rescue Plan Act Fund to address ongoing public health needs. Account noted Norwalk Community Recovery and account noted Community Services Direct Program. Do we have a motion on this item? Councilmember Jen McMurray, thank you. And we have with us Lamont Daniels, our Chief of Community Services, to provide the narrative on this item.
Thank you again, Chair. So you all received the accompanied packet, which is a slide deck. I'm not going to put it up, but that gives you a pretty detailed, I hope. But I would like to just share some further context. As you all know, that the city of Norwalk received the $39 million. And so to address the community needs portion, which speaks to the negative economic impacts of COVID-19, the city of Norwalk, through Mayor Rose administration, we've allocated, would like to allocate it rather, $2 million to create the Norwalk Community Recovery Fund Program. What makes me excited about the ARPA dollars that it spells out and encourages municipalities to support the nonprofits who are on the ground. As you all know, we've all experienced COVID-19, and the nonprofits who are on the ground doing that work day in and day out will also impact it, whether from an employment perspective, from a service perspective, from other perspectives. So this community recovery fund will provide investments to Norwalk specific nonprofit organizations who offer services for these specific resources to our community. As noted in the document or slide deck that you received, the city, we prioritize early on a few categories which are eligible for funding through the ARPA program. As you all know, mental health is a huge priority of the administration. It's a priority for our department. And fortunate, the ARPA dollars allows for us to support or pay or provide, funding to mental health organizations, and that's what we plan to do. Also, is a category that we have prioritized is job training and workforce development. We want to get Norwalkers back to work, but also the nonprofits need resources and supports to do that. Another component that was called out in the eligible uses is youth prevention, specifically keeping you safe, identifying enrichment programs and the like. The other one is homeless and eviction intervention. Our community has been hit. I've been intimately involved in the rental assistance program and also working with the nonprofits that provide those critical homeless and eviction services. And then lastly, I often say, because I'm a father of an 8-year-old and a 1-year-old soon to be 2 in June, is our little ones. And so ARPA allows us to support our early care and education programs. Specifically, we have prioritized mental health services. Our young ones are impacted by COVID as well. So in the packet that you received through the Community Recovery Fund, we had put forth a highly competitive grant program. Organizations had to apply for funding. We arranged for an independent panel review made up of city employees and individual subject matter experts from the community. We went through a robust scoring and evaluation program. And on Wednesday, April 20th, we will be making our proposed recommendations that will draw down the $1.5 million to the organizations that met the criteria. I'll split them up in two, Chair. That's for the 1.5. I don't know if you want me to go straight into the 500, if there's any specific questions for the $1.5 million for the Community Recovery Fund.
Any questions or comments related to that aspect of the request? I think you covered it rather well. So let's move on to the 500K.
Thank you. So 1.5 is for the Community Recovery Fund. And I can tell you, because we will be providing the recommended grantees, if you will. All the money will be dispersed at that point. This is not will go on for the year. And I've been working directly with the CFO that as part of the requirement, we are proactively asking which I use grantee language, the applicants to specifically identify not just the city's priority, but the specific expenditure category that we have done. And I'll be preparing to share that on Wednesday night and then get it over to the CFO and Mr. Ellis for their review. We've also asked for the aggregate $2 million. We've also asked for that funding. As you all know, our health department has been front and center since the COVID response. And one of the areas that the funding allows us to is do some upgrades within the health department. So part of that $500,000, we are looking to put forth an RFP for what is called a negative air pressure room. I did not know about this until through these conversations, but basically it's installing an airborne infectious disease management system. For the public that may not know, although COVID has been front and center, we also administer the TB tuberculosis analysis, and people know that is also infectious as well. So this will allow us, with this ARPA funding that we're really excited to do some very critical upgrades around ensuring that the facilities in the health department will provide the proper protocols if they're treating and when they're treating, because we do have a small clinic that operates in the health department. In addition to the $500,000, we have proposed for the library to purchase, which is antimicrobial furniture, and that's purchase of antibacterial mold furniture. As you all know, the library is a high volume place. People come in and out. And so to prevent constantly sanitation, and while we will continue to do that, there's furniture that can eliminate, that won't hold different infections and colds and stuff like that. So again, looking at the ARPA eligibility, we are proposing to upgrade some of the library furniture, especially in the children's centers and the computer stations presently. In addition to that, Chair, I know you mentioned, one more before I get to the point that you raised. We also, the Mayor's Summer Youth, we provide, the Mayor's Summer Youth provides dollars through city funding, and we also do fundraising. We would like to increase youth opportunities. So we also will be allocating funding to increase spots for the Mayor's Summer Youth Program. And this will allow our young people to have an amazing employment experience, job skills, life skill training, and we would like to increase that. Unfortunately, the fundraising has not been as what we desired, so we have proposed ARPA dollars to help increase opportunities for young people. The other two areas Chair, that you indicated around specific hiring, one program is the Family Navigation Program, and that is a fully funded grant program. However, this past year too, the funder has asked the city to chip in, if you will, or support. So we have allocated, is a 60-40 match. So the city has allocated 40%, and we have proposed to use ARPA dollars. So I know the question that becomes, how are you going to say it? Well, that's cool. I'll be very upfront. That's a work in progress. However, I would like to point out that it was called out in the efficiency study that the Family Navigation Program is an amazing program. It's meeting the needs and it's doing what it's intended to do. So that's a longer discussion over the year, but at this point, we continue to serve the constituents of the city of Norwalk through the Family Navigation Program. So that's that pool of money. We are in the process of doing an RFP and what that costs. I have, just some figures that we have identified, which would allocate the 500, but I don't have real numbers because we have not officially started the RFP process for the health department and the furniture for the library. And we will then look at the fundraising that is generated, and our goal is to employ 150 youth. So if we fall short, we're proposing to draw down dollars, which allows us to support summer youth, keeping kids active off the streets during the summer.
Great, thank you. Councilmember David Hooverman.
Thank you, Chairman Burnett. Chief Daniels, I am a huge fan, and I'm so thankful that you are here with us in Norwalk. I think it's an amazing feather in our cap, and all the work that you've done is amazing. The Family Navigator Program, what do we need to do to make sure that it outlives any grant funding, that it's a permanent part of the structure of our community? I mean, I know you probably don't have an answer right now, but if we can start having those conversations like you indicated, to be able to make sure that that lives past the grant world, because I think it's such a valuable program. I thought it was a valuable program when you proposed it and brought it in, and it has proven to be just that. And whatever help you need, please let us know.
Thank you for that, Councilman Hooverman. So we will continue to actively and robustly identify grant opportunities. But the city, and I may be proposing for support in my operating budget. I'm not there yet, but I think that's a fair question to ask, and it's a fair question that I'm thinking about presently. Thank you.
Great. Councilmember Diana Revelous.
All sounds great. I'm literally only just bringing this up because I promise you it's going to come back to you too, Lamont. So I'm just forewarning and for lack of sounding like a broken record, but in particularly backtracking a little bit with mental health. And this has been scientifically connected. Is there any spaces and places that are connecting nutrition and actually artistic development with emotional supports, because that's both have been very much connected to development of instabilities or stabilizations in emotion and mood and chemistry. So just wondering, just in any umbrella, is there a place and space that's speaking to that is more of a let's get the cause instead of just reacting to the effect?
That's a great question. I can tell you, Councilwoman, that in terms of the applicants that came forth, we did not see any applicants that speak to that. But also what makes me pleased with this process that during the contract phase, we can ask the grantees, once approved, to look at other treatment models as they receive the funding. I wouldn't make that a mandate, but we certainly can recommend for them to explore treatment models. I can tell you in the score and rubric, they are scored around cultural sensitivity, where and how people are treated, but we certainly through the contractual phase encourage them to look at, a holistic perspective. That is certainly something we can do and that I will plan to do.
Thank you.
Great. Are there any other questions or comments related to this resolution? Okay, hearing, seeing none, by a sign of raising your hand, all those in favor show by the sign of aye. And I don't see Nora, and John is an aye. So, okay, so yes, so that it's unanimous. The item is approved, and as stated earlier, this will now move to the full council at the Tuesday, April 26th meeting for full council approval. And thank you for the input on the family navigator position. We'll track that, and as you stated, we'll work towards a solution in terms of this vital position.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Have a happy holiday, everyone.
Great, same to you. Moving on to item 13, which is another ARPA funding request that reads as follows: resolution requesting for economic and community development ARPA projects aggregating in the amount of $8,178,750 from ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act funds. And then we have account noted Wall Street construction, account noted mobility sidewalk and bike, account noted complete streets, account noted project management, account noted business COVID assistance, account noted redevelopment small business, account noted capital access management micro, okay, account noted WMBE grants to small business, account noted innovation grant for startup, account noted permitted and licensed software, account noted digitizing documentation, account noted business navigation online, account noted administrator for ARP, account noted permit coordinator, account noted event implementation program, account noted tree planting program, account noted tree planting sidewalk, account noted climate action plan, account noted redevelopment maritime aquarium, account noted harbor use plan study, account noted affordable housing plan, and account noted South Norwalk School sidewalks. Do we have a motion on this? Councilmember David Hooverman, thank you very much. And we have with us Jessica Bonacek, who is our Chief of Economic Community Development, on the call to take us through all of these great projects. And I believe she has a presentation she'd like to share.
Thank you very much. Let me just get that up here for you. Great. So good evening, everyone. Thanks for having our item here this evening. Really excited to go through the presentation with you to give you a little bit of background on what we've been doing. So wanted to just remind you that when we came to the Common Council many moons ago, I believe it was in October, we talked a little bit about how we were identifying priorities for the ARPA funds and how we had gone through more than 30 different studies and 30 different plans to be able to identify what the community has been telling us about and what the community would like us to focus on. And so through all those efforts, we ended up coming up with multiple themes that we were hearing about just by reading through and really documenting what exactly the community had been asking for. And so you can see some of these common themes that have popped up, regardless if it was POCD or a transportation master plan, or even thinking about the East Norwalk TOD. And so we start to see this. And basically what we wanted to do was pull together the list of all of the projects that had been identified or had been asked for. And there were over 150 projects in total that were categorized for this exercise. And what was really exciting is that we actually have an opportunity to be able to use different funding sources to be able to meet the needs and be able to satisfy the majority of the list of projects that were identified. And I think this is just really an exciting time in local government and really unique time in local government where we have this culmination of all of these funding sources that are really coming together to allow us to be so responsive to the community in a meaningful way. And so when we focused on the economic and community development ARPA funds, we identified $8.2 million worth of projects. And so it's approximately 20%, 21% of the total ARPA funds that the city of Norwalk will receive. And in addition to this $8.2 million, we also have the $3 million from the MLK Corridor Initiative and the $3.5 million from the GGP fund as well. And so this is really where it comes into being able to identify, and the group has worked hard to be able to identify the different criteria for ARPA, different criteria for the MLK program, which is funded through a DCD grant at the state level, and then the GGP funding, which is the local funding. And so different criteria and different timelines for each of these funding sources. And as a result of that, we were able to really mix and match the projects that were identified, those 150 projects, and over 90% of the projects will be funded through these three funding sources. So when it comes to an economic and community development standpoint, what priorities are we focused on? Well, we're focused on walkability and mobility, business support, modernizing in support of business, and that's modernizing our processes here in City Hall. It's focusing on housing, including affordable housing and environmental and green space. And when we look at this, it really is talking about building healthier neighborhoods and building healthy and sustainable neighborhoods. And so the way that it breaks out is that we would take the 3.4 million from the 8.2 for walkability and connectivity, 3.7 for business support, 120,000 for housing, and environmental green space is $1 million. And there may be a question as to why are some buckets more and some buckets less, and why does it look like that? But because of those three funding sources that we have, we've been able to really bring bring them together to be responsive to the different topic areas and the different priority areas that we're focused on. And so that's why you see those little bullet points there that say, although walkability and connectivity for the ARPA funding is 3.4 million, in reality, walkability and connectivity is 5.4 million across all of those different funding sources. So just wanted to give you a little bit extra context as to some of the other work that's going on that's complementary to the ARPA funding. And it's not as though if it's not in the ARPA list that we've forgotten about it or that it's left out. It actually is probably more so associated to a different funding bucket. So when we talk about walkability and connectivity for ARPA specifically, we're talking about the Wall Street area and design for phase 2 and phase 3. We're talking about funding to support sidewalk and bike lane construction. The South Norwalk School, which has recently been in discussions, talking about funding to be able to support sidewalk installation around the proximity of the school. And then talking about complete streets, $250,000 to be able to put an RFP out, to be able to do complete streets. And I know we've talked a lot about Vision Zero, and what we've identified is that we really want to get to Vision Zero, and to be able to do that, we need a complete streets plan in place. And so I think that the good work that DPW does and that Transportation, Mobility and Parking does will really be improved and enhanced further by the ability to have a complete streets guide and a standard in place. The other item here is a TMP project manager. And as you can see, there's going to be a heavy lift with all of the work that's going on. 3.4 million for ARPA, but 5.4 million in total across all funding streams. And so this is a position that is not It is not an FTE position. It would be a contract position. We understand that it would only be funded for the years that the ARPA funding is available to us. The project manager would focus specifically on the TMP projects, working on these particular items. It's great that we just we're going through the capital budget process because and you've heard from transportation, mobility and parking in different committees, how many projects that they have up and running currently. And so, as you know, the inclusion of the ARPA and the GGP and the MLK projects just means that they'll need a little bit of extra support and able to get these projects across the finish line. So again, in total, 5.4 million across all funding streams. Do we want to, did anyone have questions about this particular slide?
Yes, Councilmember Diana Revelous.
Thank you, Council Chair. I'm sorry. One of the things that really stick to me, and I'm so sorry again, not to sound like a broken record, but you said, I'm looking at this, you just said it's sustainability, right? Definitely for my community in particular, but for our community overall, structuring around a school that we're trying to develop in South Norwalk. But it always seems to go into like projects and housing instead of home ownership, and literally businesses, just like we were talking about earlier, how we lost a lot of our local businesses. Entrepreneurship, home ownership strengthens a community. I'm not seeing things that are directly connected to this, although I saw business development. That's why I kind of put it out there over to the side a little bit, but literally not structuring in particularly areas that don't have a heavier population of home ownership, or getting those structures for those families, because that's what strengthens not only that community, but the school it's in. I'm wondering where and how can this be placed, because it's a big part and it's actually kind of keeping a glass ceiling on the people that you're trying to help. So in breaking that and sustaining our community and making us a more holistic, stronger staple here and in Connecticut, how can we utilize funds to do this for our programs? Because really supporting people to continue to be in projects or in rentership is not sustainability nor structuring strength for that community.
Right. So maybe what I can do is walk through the rest of the presentation and speak a little bit about the business support and the housing piece of it. And then I can answer some of the pieces of your question, but then also I can highlight some of the work that we're doing with redevelopment as well.
Okay, forgive me, my question's too early then.
No, that's okay.
I'm sorry.
I probably asked if anyone had questions too early. Let me run through the rest and then we'll do questions at the end.
Sorry.
No, you're totally fine.
Jessica, before you move on, just a quick question. Under the new South Norwalk School sidewalks, I was under the impression, I could be wrong, that we were including funding under the school project for sidewalks. So, I'm not sure if this in collaboration with the work that Alan Lowe's team is doing with the school project, or is this a separate effort in terms of sidewalks?
My understanding is that this is a separate effort. That is my understanding, that this is further enhances the project.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification.
Sure. I'm just going to turn my video off here. 1 second, please. I'm sorry, just 1 second. Hi, everyone. Sorry about that.
Problem.
I have a little wee one that needed a little cuddle from mom, so I apologize for that. So just wanted to talk a little bit about the business support and specifically the COVID assistance program that we're looking at. And so, as you know, as we noted, there's a lot of efforts that are going to be towards business support. And this one specifically is something that we're really excited about. It is in addition to phase one, which we did in 2020, where we provided $5,000 grants to 30 businesses through a lottery system. And part of the reason why we're so excited about these particular business support programs is that they really focus on women and minority-owned businesses. And so that's something that is working really well for the city and something that we want to focus on as a priority. So we have a total of $745,000 that we're looking to allocate to businesses of different sizes, which is a little bit of a different approach that we took from phase one. Phase one, we didn't have an employee number that was specific to the structure. But what we're looking to do is allocate $370,000 in 2022, $230,000 next year, and $145,000 the following year. And again, that would have a commitment with the women and minority-owned businesses of 34%. So really looking forward to being able to put this forward. The different businesses have applied for phase two, and we are looking to actually do the lottery in the next week or two. The cuddling time is over. I'm going to give her back to her dad.
Oh, we do have a hand up for a question or comment, Councilmember David Hooverman.
Yes, Jessica, is this in addition to, is this something extra above the Kiva program?
It is, yep. So,
okay,
yep.
All right, great.
It is, yep. So there's different pieces to, so all of the pieces that Chairman Burnett read out, all of those are different projects and line items that are part of the ARPA funds. And in total, there's probably about 15 or 20 of them. So basically what you're seeing is each one of the slides is almost a one line item. There's a few slides that consolidate the lines, just in the sense of presenting in a timely manner, but this is just one. This is one of those tasks that we plan to achieve through the ARPA funding.
Well, I'm liking the fact that it seems like we have a, sort of a multiple front approach towards small business development here. And that's exciting to me. I'm glad that ARPA's giving us the opportunity to sort of approach this from a number of different directions. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, no, and thanks for pointing that out. I think it's really important, right? Some of them are loans, some of them are grants, some of them are support programs for business infrastructure, some of them are workforce training programs, some of them are capital programs. So we're really trying to hit it at all fronts. This is more of a this can be used for capital, but it's actually can be used for operating as well. So this gives a little bit more flexibility for the business owner to be able to use the funding and support. So the business.
We do, I'm sorry,
Oh,
Jessica,
sorry.
we do have a hand up, Councilmember Jen McMurray.
Thank you, Chair Burnett. First of all, Jess, you are a super mom.
Well, I don't know about that because the baby
I
shirt
don't
was
think I
wailing
could
in the
cuddle
computer.
and do everything you're doing while also giving this presentation and doing it so flawlessly. So my hat's off to you. There's a cape underneath there somewhere. Second, I just had a quick question about this program and how we are communicating or promoting this program to the local businesses so they know that it's available.
Yeah, so actually we have a really large database that is our business database that we work off of, and we have hundreds and hundreds of businesses that have been communicating back and forth with us. And Sabrina Church, our Director of Business Development and Tourism, has done a great job. She usually is the touch point for all businesses when they're coming to Norwalk. And as you all know, we've had over 400 businesses open up since the beginning of COVID, and a lot of them have gone through Sabrina's shop to be able to do so. In addition to that, we work really closely with the Chamber of Commerce to ensure that not only are they getting the information, but they're pushing the information out to all of their partners and all of the businesses that are part of the Chamber and spreading it even more so. We've also worked with Advanced CT, which is the Connecticut arm of DCD that does the marketing and promotional, just to make sure that they're aware that we're doing this particular program. And then in addition to that, we're launching it on the website and talking about it on social media, but more so really pushing it out directly to the businesses via email. And that way, if they have questions about the forms, then they have a contact point to be able to do that. So for phase 2, we have over 100 applicants that have applied for the funding, and we're currently scrubbing the list of applicants. They need to meet certain criteria in order to be eligible for the funding. So we're just going through that now, and we're going to be doing a lottery for the women and minority but business-owned entities first. And then after that, we'll be doing more of a general lottery. And so we're just getting ready to do that. But with 100 applicants, they're asking for more than $850,000 in funding if we were to fund them all. So I do have to say that in the first phase, we ended up with more than 200 applicants asking for 2 or 3 times the amount of money that we were able to give. So we knew that the program needed to be offered again. And it's really great that ARPA allows us the opportunity to be able to push this grant funding through.
Thank you. It sounds like a wonderful opportunity for a lot of businesses.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, next is the Business Development Center. So this is where the Kiva piece comes in. So we're looking at launching a physical location in the Wall Street West Avenue neighborhood that is a location for businesses to receive assistance and individuals to receive assistance, not only on workforce training, but also having a connection point where they're able to apply for small loans that are no interest with no fees through a partnership with a nonprofit called Kiva. And so it's a really great opportunity for us to, one, not only open up an actual physical business center that allows people to come in and seek help, not only from the city, but also the redevelopment agency, as well as the Chamber of Commerce, and as well as the SCORE team that works with the Chamber of Commerce. But it also is an opportunity for us to be able to partner with Kiva, which is an organization that offers loans between $1,000 and $15,000. Again, no interest, no application fees. The city isn't involved in actually loaning the money. Kiva is involved in loaning the money in a really unique way. We've gone to Economic and Community Development Committee a couple of times to talk specifically about this program. But what we'd like to be able to do is actually offer $247,500 in ARPA funds as a match to the women, minority, and business-owned entities. And what that means is that if they partner with Kiva and they ask and they fundraise for a loan, that we would be willing to match them dollar for dollar up to $7,500, which is funding for no less than 33 businesses. But in addition to that, we also are partnering with the SCORE staff to be on site to be able to offer the business plans and be able to offer the workforce training. So something that I don't think the city of Norwalk has ever done before, again, because of ARPA, where we have this ability to offer this platform where we're not only just offering loans and grants, but workforce training. And this is in this particular instance, we will be looking to hire a capital access manager, and that manager is the Kiva person who would actually run the software and administrate the software. They, again, don't have anything to do with the loan approvals. They don't have anything to do with loaning the money. They simply are the coordinator and facilitator between the business and Kiva, who is the loaner of the money and manages. I shouldn't say they loan the money. It's actually a fundraising entity, but they help to manage that. And it's just a really, really great opportunity. The capital access manager, again, would be a position that is not an FTE position. It would only be funded for 3 years. The Kiva partnership that we'll be signing is only a 3-year contract. So we're going to see how it goes over the 3 years. And the great news is that for the $247,000 that is a match, when the 3-year Kiva partnership program is done, that money gets returned back to the city. So it's really a revolving fund, but that money will come back to the city. It won't get lost in the Kiva system. So something that we're really excited about. A lot of information on this particular slide, and you probably have a lot of questions. And to be honest, I may not have all the answers. We're really figuring it out. We know that these three components are the three components that we want to offer. And we're just really excited to be able to offer the residents of Norwalk an opportunity to be able to work with us and the redevelopment agency and the chamber to be able to seek these services.
Yes, Council Member Diana Revelous.
First, I just want to say I have a 17-year-old and it doesn't stop. So you're doing a great job. I'm also having it don't stop. They want the cuddling and everything. And I got a little one in my tummy that's talking to me while we're speaking. So I get it, but 17, they're just a bigger baby. Secondly, I really do appreciate, obviously, this part. This is kind of why I kind of left businesses away, because being not only minority, a woman, and a business owner in Norwalk, I've seen these come out. I am a score. I do deal with scores, so I have seen this, and I think it's amazing, especially for for-profit companies that are here, right? I just wanted to know, is there an age limitation to these with the qualification, like basically 18 and over? Can it be youth teens that, or youth women of minority that can do this? Just wondering, because we have programs in Norwalk that actually work with youth who are engaging in entrepreneurship. So I'm just wondering if there's an age limit or minimum.
No, there's no age limit. And we're working with the redevelopment agency. And so some of it is eligible for low income and some of it's eligible for nonprofit versus for-profit. And so that's something that we're going to have to manage internally, but there's no age limitations on any of this. And there's no limitation on if it's an individual seeking to start up a business or if it's a business that's already started that needs some help. So there's a lot of flexibility here.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Great. So moving on, we have another partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, which is really exciting. We've actually done a phase 1 of this program already, but we're looking to support 3 additional phases of what we're calling the Norwalk Innovations Program. And this one is really great. It is a grant program for businesses and startups, but it requires the business to go through workforce training and go through a seminar series. And if the business goes through the seminar series and meets all of the criteria, then they actually go in competition against one another in front of a panel, almost like a Shark Tank type of approach. And the panel then decides who the most promising startups are. And we then offer a $10,000 startup grant for those particular businesses. And so in this case, we're looking at $330,000, which is 33 grants. So 33 $10,000 grants over the 3 years. So that would be also focused on 120,000 or 36% for women and minority owned businesses. And so you can see what we're trying to do. We're trying to really do the loans, do the grants, make sure that people have gone through workforce training, make sure that they're in the best place possible to be able to take the funding that we're able to give them and move forward to be able to start businesses in Norwalk. And so it's not really just about giving grants and giving loans, but it's really about focusing on the individual and the individual skill set and being able to be responsive to what is required to be able to start a successful and sustainable business.
Councilmember Diana Revelous, do you still have your hand up for a question or?
No, I apologize. I didn't realize it was still up. I'm sorry.
No problem.
So we're also looking at something that's a little bit indirect for business support. And this is an urban core focused public programming to attract people to businesses. And really what this is thinking about how the city can play a stronger role in being able to offer public events, public get-togethers, how we can think about food festivals and art festivals, how we can think about bringing buskers into our urban core, and really starting to do programming at the local level on the ground to be able to attract people to Norwalk, not only on the weekends, but during the week as well. And we have this under business support because it's not direct loans and grants, but it actually is helping to really feed energy and vitality into the neighborhoods and have that spillover in the restaurants and have the spillover in all of the community areas that we would like to see this. So we're looking at program coordination and event funding. And so again, do I have all the answers for this? I don't, but we've actually been working with procurement really closely to figure out if we should be hiring a person for the 3-year time period, or if we should be putting out an RFP on the street where there's companies and vendors that do this type of work already, and they can help to bring their events and their items and get-togethers to the city of Norwalk. And so lastly, when it comes to business support, we're talking about modernization and business support. And one of the things that the efficiency study had identified for us is that we have a lot of work to do in getting up to speed from a technological standpoint. And so we're looking at implementing a few things here. One of them is the business navigation tool. And this is really helping to summarize what the business process is in order to be able to open a business here in Norwalk, depending on what the type of business is, or being able to actually develop a single family, multifamily household. So really helping people understand the pathway to success here in the city of Norwalk when it comes to permitting and licensing. And that feeds into the second item, which is permitting and licensing software. And we all know that it really is time for us to get permitting and licensing software up and on the go for the city of Norwalk. And what that means is that the homeowner or the business owner should be able to submit their applications online. They should be able to watch as their application goes through the different departments for approval, and they should be able to get their permits to be able to move forward online through email. So really working to work with building and code enforcement, the health department, DPW, building and code, planning and zoning, as well as procurement and legal, to be able to look, and IT is a huge player in this as well, to be able to understand what's required in an RFP to be able to put that out on the street so that we can get vendors to be able to be responsive to that particular item. We've gotten a lot of interest. We know that there are a number of different cities who are doing this, and we're really eager to be able to launch software that answers the questions we need to. But in order to be able to do stuff like that, we need to be able to digitize documentation. And right now we have a lot of documents and a lot of paper in City Hall. And we actually have different folks that fill out paperwork to be able to send someone into the basement to go find the box, to bring the box upstairs, to be able to look through all the field cards, to find the field cards, to be able to do the research, to be able to photocopy them and then hand them paper copy to the homeowner or the business owner that's looking for the information. And so being able to digitize it, all the documentation will be a huge improvement to the process that is currently existing today. And not only that, but it also will give the public access to all of the documents that are here in City Hall, while being able to allow us to really streamline our processes. And so how are we going to do all these things? Well, that's where the permit coordinator comes in. And the permit coordinator is a position that is an FTE position. So this is a position unlike the ones that I've been talking about previously. This is a permit coordinator position that would sit with business development and tourism. We would use the ARPA funding to fund the first 3 years of the position, but after that, we would have it be in the operating budget. Sabrina Church, our director of business development and tourism, has included it in her operating budget through this budget cycle. So it is in the budget cycle currently. It is in the operating funds. Basically, the way that the operating budget shows is that it would be zero funded for the next 3 years. And then in 2025, we would end up funding that position. So we see that this position is something that will evolve over time. It will not only help to procure all the documents and curate all the documents that are needed and required for a business navigation tool, but this person will actually work as the project manager for the permitting and licensing software implementation as well.
I see Councilmember Nora Jagelski-Eichner has her hand up for a question or comment. Hello, Nora. Nora, are you there? I don't know. Okay. Looks like a hands down. Councilmember David Hoogman.
Thank you, Chairman Burnett. Jess, just real quickly, is 3 years going to be enough time to digitize all of that documentation in City Hall?
So in addition to the $400,000, we actually got approved $150,000 last year in our capital budget through planning and zoning. So I do believe that we will be able to, because the way that the ARPA dollars work is that you need to have the money appropriated by December 31st, 2024. If we have a contract in place that allows us to be able to commit the $550,000 over even the next 5 or 6 years, then that money is still appropriated. So as long as we're able to get the contract in place and have the ARPA funds committed to this, the other thing that we can do is we can draw down on the ARPA funds first and then draw down on the capital funds second to be able to make sure that we are in a good spot.
Okay, Councilmember Tom Keegan.
Hi, Jess, I see the addition of a couple of positions. Will they also have benefits?
So originally, when we put together the presentation and the numbers, we did not include fringe benefits, but in working with HR, we went in and we revised all of the numbers. So these numbers are 3 years of salary plus fringe benefits.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Nora Najelski-Eichner.
Thank you. So as someone who has gone through the recent times, I am beyond thrilled. Do you have any sense of when software might be up and running? Is it going to take, do you have to do the full digitization project before you can begin implementing that? Or can the process be working simultaneously?
Yeah, so it's going to be working simultaneously. It's going to take at least a couple years. And we've tried to do this in the past and we've been unsuccessful. And I think the reason why we've been unsuccessful is a couple reasons. One, I think that we did not go through the exercise of mapping the flow of permits and licenses. We simply tried to implement a piece of software that would help us go online, but we didn't necessarily understand the workflow, the process behind it. And so there really is in my mind, from a project management standpoint and the work that I've done at the Kennedy School with helping different cities implement these types of programs, there really is a pre-installation, pre-implementation phase that is absolutely crucial to these projects and the success of these projects, which is to be able to sit with all of the teams that I had mentioned earlier that do any permitting and licensing within the city and be able to map out the pathway of each permit and the pathway of each license and be able to understand not only what the current process is, but help us identify and recommend ways that we can streamline the process and create efficiencies within that. So that's really the piece that I see as phase one. The phase two is then actually building out the software to be able to be responsive to the way in which we permit and license. So while we do all of those things, we are going to be digitizing the documentation, and really they could stand alone. The business navigation tool and the permitting and licensing could be implemented if we didn't digitize documentation, and we could digitize documentation if we didn't do permitting and licensing software. But the city is way better off and way more competitive and working at a way better sort of rate when it comes to processes, internal processes and management if we do these together. And I think that your question is a great question in the sense of how do we think that we're going to phase all of this work? And the truth is that while we digitize the documentation, we're going to have to be doing the business navigation tool and the permitting and licensing. And one of the things we've talked about from digitizing documentation is what do we need to digitize and what don't we, and how do we actually go through the process of identifying what gets digitized first. And so we've been talking about digitizing the most recent field cards and the most recent documentation first and foremost, and working backwards from that But as you know, some of our field cards are from 1918. They've been written in by pencil. The pencil's been scratched out, and then it was written in with a red pencil, and then scratched out and written in with a blue pencil. So, you know, the longer, the older those field cards are, the more complicated they are. So I think that's our general thinking at this particular point in time. And Steve Kleppen is the one who's going to be formulating the RFP for this particular project, the digitizing piece, and then IT will be doing the RFP for the business navigation tool and permitting and licensing.
Terrific. That is so exciting. And I really love the points you're making about needing to map out the process first. I think that's, you know, seems very smart as a way to go forward. One suggestion I might make, which you certainly may already be considering, is that as part of that process, you know, set up a roundtable or a focus group with a couple of local contractors who can sort of give you insight into, well, you know, I work in Greenwich, I work in New Canaan, I work in Norwalk, I work in Westport. Here's what I see in the different cities. This is what works best. Because I know from personal experience, our contractor has had a lot of perspectives on what works better maybe in other cities than in Norwalk. And that might be a way of getting you some insight into streamlining with, you know, your customer base and your users. That might also help prevent some challenges down the line when you get to implementation.
Yeah.
But I'm thrilled about this. The other projects, the things I'm incredibly excited about, but I just wanted to draw up particular long-term improvement for the city's functions.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's a really great recommendation. Okay, moving on. So we're out of the business support section and into housing. And so we are looking to fund an affordable housing plan. The RFP was actually released a couple of weeks back. It's going to be closing in the next couple of weeks. And we're looking to be able to build an affordable housing plan for the city of Norwalk. And so one of the things that we would like to be able to do is say, how many units do we have? How many units do we need, and what is the gap? And I think that this speaks to some of the questions that have come up tonight, as far as not only are we talking about entrepreneurialism and we're talking about business development and workforce training, but we also need to address housing, and more specifically affordable housing. And as we all know, housing is really the foundation for people to be established and be able to be in a situation to actually go for the workforce training and go and seek education and go and be able to be a part of the community. And housing is just such an important piece of that. And so it's something that we've been thinking about for a very long time. And I know that the city has put in affordable housing plan efforts in the past. But this is going to be a comprehensive plan. It's going to include many advisory group members. And again, we're looking to start collecting those applications or those responses to the RFP currently. We're really eager to get this going. And I think that what this will do is it will help us shape a number of the programs moving forward that will focus specifically on housing ownership or loans to folks that are looking to start up. Looking for home ownership as an option. So I feel like this will be a really great tool for us to be able to take a set of recommendations and really implement those recommendations moving forward. So although it doesn't speak to, this particular item doesn't speak to the additional 1.5 million that we're going to be dedicating to housing as a whole through the 3 funding streams, it definitely is one that is required and one that will help us answer many of the questions that we have here in Norwalk, and being able to establish programs and work directly with the redevelopment agency who is funded through CDBG and HUD to be able to create some of these programs that are responsive to the community. And lastly, here we have environmental green space. So I told Councilman Burnett that I'd be quick, but we got lots of good stuff going on here, and it's just so excited and being able to talk about all these priorities. So, you know, we have $1 million here, and we're talking about a tree management plan and a tree planting program and a climate action plan. And so we just actually developed the initial draft RFP that incorporates the tree management plan and the tree planting program. And one of the things that we're looking at doing is creating a canopy. So how do you How do you do an inventory and an assessment on the trees? Then how do you understand what the potential is for a canopy and a tree inventory in the city of Norwalk? And then how do we manage our existing trees, and how do we create a planting program that helps us achieve our goals? So really excited about that. I think all those pieces go together. The climate action plan is actually a different and separate item that is being worked on, and a separate effort that's being worked on. Again, extremely important, and especially when we hear from DPW talking about flooding and talking about some of the green infrastructure that's going to be looked at for the city. But this is a really important one, especially because here in the city of Norwalk, we are such a coastal community with multiple different riparian zones going through the city. And so really, I think this will go a far way. Again, I'm not really sure that Norwalk has done a climate action plan in the past. I may be wrong. I haven't, there may have been one done before I arrived here, but I just, we need to be thinking about these things. We need to be thinking about climate change. We need to be thinking about resiliency and sustainability. Planning and zoning has started to apply to a number of different grants that are resiliency based. And we're really excited about the focus on that. So this will just further that. One of the things we're currently working on with the redevelopment agency is working with the Nature Conservancy to be able to do phase 1 of what a climate action plan might be. And they're actually offering their services free of charge to be able to help us look at just the initial, just an initial scope of what we're going to be working on here. So the next is an economic impact analysis for the Maritime Aquarium. This is something that the Maritime Aquarium has talked to us about for a little while now. And basically what they're trying to do is be in a situation where they're extremely competitive with different grants and competitive with different funding that is coming through, and to be able to show what the return on the Maritime Aquarium is, not only from an institution on its own, but also from looking at the social equity piece of it and looking at the economic impact of the neighborhood around it and the region around it is really important. And so we're looking to be able to pull some data and calculate some numbers, looking at the competitiveness of the aquarium and what it has to offer, and being able to help. And we know that a lot of nonprofits and a lot of different institutions like the aquarium have a hard time coming up with those hard, concrete, tangible numbers to be able to present in grants. And so we're looking to support them there. And then last but not least, the harbor use plan. This is one that I'm pretty excited about. This is not a management plan. We have a management plan in place, just like every other community in Connecticut, which helps us to understand the use of the harbor. But the harbor use plan here for $125,000 is bringing in a consultant to be able to look at the different uses that are currently going on in the harbor itself, and then to identify a utilization plan and make recommendations on how to further use the harbor. So what could we be doing for transient boating? What can we be doing for using software to help transient boaters come into the city of Norwalk? What kind of events can we be holding? How are we balancing the use of commercial, industrial, and recreational use in the harbor? And so not only looking at the health of the harbor, which we know can use some attention, but then looking at also how we can use the harbor to a greater extent, not only for the business side, but also the recreational side as well. And so I've seen a number of these plans done in Massachusetts, and they always come out with a set of recommendations that are not only environmentally educational, but also then are focused on economic development as well. So really excited about that one. And so
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Nora, I think did she lower her hand? Yes, she did. Okay. Quick question. I see you just touched on the tree planting program and tree planting sidewalks as projects 17 and 18. And I also see under the DPW request, they have a project plan for planting DPW wide. Is tree planting, is that two separate projects or in collaboration or?
So no, I shouldn't have answered that so quickly. They are in collaboration, and what you would end up finding is you'll see funding in GGP, you'll see funding in MLK, you'll see funding in the ARPA, not only here, but also with DPW. And the whole entire idea here is that when we talk about GGP and the MLK funding in particular, that is focused directly on South Norwalk, the South Norwalk geography, right? So that funding will be focused on that particular neighborhood. We wanted to include tree planting on the ARPA side because this is a citywide program. And so we want to be able to balance tree planting outside of South Norwalk as well. But this will be in collaboration and coordination with DPW. We've actually worked with procurement and we've worked with Chitsmay and the comptroller's office to be able to ensure that all of this funding is attached to DPW's tree contract that they currently have, and that we would be looking at utilizing DPW's current plan to be able to do that. So all in coordination, we work really closely between our department, specifically TMP and DPW work really closely with Chris Torrey and Paul Sotnick on all of the tree planting exercises. And so just when we talk about tree planting, please know that it's in coordination with all of the other departments that are focused on these things, and that you'll probably see different funding sources speak to tree planting, because we've been trying to ensure that we're focused on tree planting as a priority across the board.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
So in summary, again, 8.2 million for economic community development projects. And as you can see, we've really tried to focus on all of the priorities that we have identified through those 30 plans and studies that we looked at. Again, approximately 150 different projects, and we're pretty optimistic that we'll be able to fund approximately 90% of them using the 3 different funding sources. But for ARPA specifically, it was great to be able to give you an overview of what our ideas are for being able to fund walkability, business support, housing, and environmental green space projects. You can see, I think, that we're trying to address many different priorities in many ways to be able to ensure that we are as successful as possible with helping residents with not only getting through the pandemic, but then also establishing skill sets and workforce development and establishing communities that are healthy and safe moving forward. So we're really looking for long-term impacts here, even though the funding is really a 3-year funding stream. This is really about utilizing what we have available to us today to be able to ensure that Norwalk is enhanced and a better place for everybody moving forward for the long term. The one thing that I do want to mention that is also in the economic community development budget for ARPA that you have in front of you that we did not mention in this one specific presentation is that there is an ARPA position, an administrator for an ARPA position, which is a 3-year funded position that will sit with Henry, the CFO, and his team. And that person or that company, depending on how we decide to move forward, will help to administer ARPA funds, help with all of the reporting, help to be able to submit all of the reports to the federal government, and will help support Chitsmay and the comptroller's office in being able to ensure that we're spending down the money, how we should be spending down the money, and that we're meeting all of the checkpoints that we need to. So I will leave it at that. I will quickly mention that I didn't talk about what federal what federal ARPA ID each of those projects falls into, but it is in the spreadsheet that is in your package. So a lot of them fall into other economic support, some of them fall into administrative expenses, but we have shared this list with multiple different offices and able to just to make sure that we are on the right track here and that we're in a good place when it comes to ARPA funding and thinking about all of the different ways in which we can use it. And we've heard all positive comments and feedback, so we're feeling really good about it.
Great. Council Member Diana Revelous.
Thank you. I'm so sorry my internet messed up, so I had to go to my phone. So excuse my, even my camera won't turn on. I'm not sure. I just have one question and 2, but one you just kind of answered, but I may have overlooked. We have this slideshow, or have we received the slideshow?
You have not, but I will send it to you. I will send it to you after this meeting.
Beautiful. And then secondly, just because of a question a colleague just asked, and this is amazing, but we're really good at looking at like, or trying to get surrounding areas and their input, but we're not really good at connecting with comparative areas and their input and their good or bad. Like I know we look upon like Darien and New Canaan or whatever, but in a financial structure, they're not really kind of comparative to us. So in getting us to be not only brilliant in where we are, but in exceeding that, have we gone just to look at the pros and cons for places like Ansonia, Danbury, East Hartford, Stamford, Norwich, like the ones that we actually find that financially fall in accordance to, just so we have a stepping stone to then jump, meaning if you did go out and speak to a round table of contractors, but it's surrounding, do we ever talk to comparative just to assess all this wonderful stuff that we're going to implement?
So the answer is yes, to a certain extent, right? Do we do all that we can do? We can probably do more, admittedly, for sure. But what we try to do is we're talking to communities all the time, and we're working with communities like Westport and Darien and New Canaan, Wilton, and more specifically Stamford, and talking about, hey, what softwares are you using? What metrics are you using? What are you seeing? What has your experience been? We're experiencing these types of things. Are you experiencing the same? What does this look like in New Haven? What does this look like in Hartford? What does this look like in? So we have a lot of contacts, and we have a lot of really experienced staff in our departments that have worked in Connecticut for a number of years, that have contact with all of the different municipalities and being able to look at that. We don't keep an ongoing running list of metrics or data on how different communities are doing in these specific areas and use that as a comparative. We could do something like that. But we do talk to them in the sense of, what are your best practices? What have you learned? What should we be aware of? And especially in developing the RFPs and being able to work with some of the different vendors, and not the vendors specifically, but more the RFPs. For example, for the tree canopy RFP, we worked really closely with Hartford on that one, thinking about the licensing and software. We worked with Westport, who uses one company. We've talked to Stamford, who has relationships with different companies. So we've been really, we haven't been reaching out specifically on metrics and comparability, but looking at for best practices for sure.
I think that's amazing, and especially in the reach of like, what we want to be. But even if we can maybe get like, 2 or 3 that's really in honest of where we are and how we can get there, I think would be very effective for us, because overall for the years we have been kind of, on a very comparative levels to the one we're compared to, right? So if we can see how can do pros and cons, how we are truly maybe outdoing or maybe not, and then bring it to a place and space that like looks like Westport or New Canaan, I think it would just be very helpful on a more realistic basis of where our community is, but where we want to go, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's a great recommendation.
Right. But this is all amazing, and I look forward to the presentation, and I really do. I personally, again, not to sound like a broken record, but there's certain things that not only from lived, but for the community I represent, and truly appreciate the fact that we're looking at, and this is a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Does that complete the presentation, Jess?
It does, yes.
Okay, great. You can
stop sharing. There we go.
Perfect, great. Okay. Thank you for the very detailed presentation. The motion was made. So at this point, if there's no further questions or comments, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of this resolution, show by a raise of hand. Or? Thank you. It's unanimous. So Jessica, this will move to the full council on Tuesday, April 26th for council approval.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you for your patience with all of our household noises and whatnot. Appreciate that.
No problem.
Thanks, everyone.
Go Super
Mom
Bowl.
life.
Yeah.
Mom life.
I'm going to go to that mom life. So good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Great. Moving on to item 14, and I thank those that are still on the call for your patience. Resolution reads as follows: requesting for broadband fiber optic cable network project in the amount of $100,000 for legal costs from the ARPA American Rescue Plan Act Fund, account noted broadband fiber optic. Do we have a motion on this item? Council Member Diana Revelous, and we have our Chief Financial Officer, Henry Dakowitz, that will walk us through this.
Thank you, Chairman. The broadband project has been the beneficiary of some good fortuitous timing and luck. We started off by exploring this very complex area. We met with various vendors who had knowledge, such as Google Fiber, and some other firms, where we started getting an education. There was a group of us. It started with Anthony Carr and Vanessa Valadares from a perspective of construction. We had Joyce Liu and Rodney Garcia from the IT. Rodney is an expert in networks. He's been doing it for 40 years with Joyce, so they looked at it from a technology point of view. Sharon Connors was participating from a procurement point of view, and I contributed from a finance point of view. And we held many meetings, learned what we didn't know, and then we started getting up to speed. We then issued an RFP asking in a very broad sense for what vendors would do with us in a collaborative method. To summarize, there are two major issues with broadband. One is accessibility and the other is affordability. Because of the financial requirements of for-profit enterprises, when homes and businesses are spread out, the companies prefer to wire more dense operations. So they could wire a congested area in a core city and get many more subscribers than when those potential customers are spread out. It's more of a problem in rural areas, but there are areas of our city that are more spread out than concentrated. The second is affordability. And the issue is the for-profit enterprises always prefer to get customers who are willing to pay the high price for the package deals. It could be $150 a month, rather than making sure there are affordable packages for low-income citizens. So those are the issues we were trying to address. In the process of gaining knowledge, we started looking at, Darren Callahan of our legal department was also participating in all these discussions. When we had to draft an agreement or review a memorandum of understanding, Darren said, I just don't have this expertise. And we were fortunate enough to find two lawyers at the firm of Kutak Rock, national firm. One partner is in their Washington, D.C. office, and the other is in their Little Rock, Arkansas office. They are not only lawyers, they've been executives working with broadband companies for years, for decades. And they were retained by us to be advisors, not just on the legal matters, but as business consultants. They were non-voting members who sat in on all the RFP presentations, evaluated them, asked the questions, and allowed us to get more understanding. And the request for the $100,000 is to pay them the fees that they've already run up, as well as potential future fees. While we were in the RFP, Frontier Communications, a broadband provider who is headquartered in Norwalk, approached the city and said, we are in the process of wiring the city for broadband, and we're doing it on our own nickel. We interviewed Frontier with our consultants. We felt that their proposal and approach obviated the need to complete the RFP and enter into a partnership with another firm. So the RFP was terminated. But we have kept them accessible. So as Frontier keeps moving forward, if we have questions or issues and we want to make sure that Frontier makes the best decisions on our behalf so that we can provide both accessibility and affordability of high-speed fiber optic solutions to all of the residents of the city, we want them available. They were very impressive to everyone who's met them, both with their knowledge of the industry, the law, and just as business people. So the request, and originally we were looking at using $10 million of ARPA money, combining that with tens of millions of dollars of grant money in Washington to enable us to build our own fiber optic network owned by the city, where we could lease out the space and get revenues on the back end. We decided that it's just better to work with Frontier, but we want to make sure that if we have questions or issues, we have these consultants on hire. Originally, we looked at a $500,000 commitment for these attorneys. Given that we would be building our own network, we would be much more involved. We've cut that down to $100,000, which we feel would be sufficient to allow us to work with Frontier, but with these experts. And the money that is not being used went back into the ARPA pool to help fund other projects. So that is the request before you. I'll answer any questions.
Do we have any questions or comments related to this request? Okay, hearing, seeing none, we'll move forward. The question on the vote. All those in favor show by the sign of raising your hand, or aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay, very good. So this motion passed. So we will move this on to the full council on Tuesday, April 26th for approval of these ARPA funds.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 15, and if you allow, we'll cover the parking authority and water pollution authority budgets first, and then we'll conclude with the operating budget and the appointment of the auditor. So the next item will be the discussion and approval of fiscal year 2022 to 2023 parking authority budget as revised. And we have with us from the parking authority, James Emery, to take us through the parking authority budget.
Perfect. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. I believe I've had the pleasure of meeting a few of you, but for the folks that I haven't had the chance to meet, my name is James Emery, and I'm the Assistant Director of Parking under TMP for the City of Norwalk. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you guys can see the budget. And then I'm going to do my best to not take up too much of your time tonight. So we're seeing some really good trends coming out of post-COVID. Before the Omicron variant hit, we were showing very, very strong trends for both transient activity, permanent activity, and on-street parking. Omicron hit and kind of checked us a little bit and brought us back down to earth. But we have since trended out of that over the last couple of months, and we are looking very, very positive heading into the end of this fiscal year. So looking at that forecast and planning for some future expenses, this is kind of the budget that we've come to. We expect the on-street parking revenue to stay very, very comfortable. It looks like people are back. And they're back in full force coming downtown, which is wonderful. Again, the Omicron variant put a little dent in that over the few months there at the end of fall and beginning of winter. But we're seeing really strong signs of people coming to Norwalk, coming downtown, which is absolutely wonderful. Transient activity, especially at places like the railroad station, is looking really, really good as well. Our biggest problem that we're seeing on the revenue side of things right now is with the monthly users and the permitting. So we've worked on a couple of projects, some test projects this year to kind of lead into next fiscal year, what we can do to kind of help drive those numbers and get the word out. I think part of the problem was, for years and years and years here in Norwalk, train station permits, just the wait list has been massive, right? Because it's so popular. So I think part of the problem is people are just so used to it being sold out that they weren't aware that they were available. So we've actually made some changes to our website, and we went through and pulled some of the contact information from our pay by phone company, and we were able to send email blasts to customers who have parked two or more times in a week. Because that's where the break point is when it comes to where it becomes a better savings for the user to get the permit than to park daily. And we started getting responses almost immediately, and that started seeing those permit numbers trickle back up, which has been wonderful. So we're really going to look at putting some emphasis on make sure we can get that word out and incentivize the permit programs to get people to back to the train stations and back to commuting. Obviously, there's a little dependency there when it comes to the community as a whole. Are people going back to work? Are the people in New York City really back in the offices? And we depend heavily on that as well. So as we start seeing those trends go up, we'll start seeing our permitting numbers kind of climb back to the pre-COVID levels. From an expense side of things, we're still a little weary of a possible, another variant coming out. So we're still going to stay on with a lean and mean expense budget. We're operating at pretty much where we were during COVID for our COVID cutbacks, and our plan is to continue that trend for this fiscal year as well, just to get us a little more comfortable. And make sure that we have, everything ready to go in case there is another issue. So we're still going to run pretty much that crew with those expenses. We do have some plans to pull in and do some condition assessments of our facilities. The facilities are really in a state of wonderful repair right now, and we want to make sure that we keep it that way. So we did put a delay on our condition assessments through COVID, and we need to get back on track with that. And on top of that, we want to make sure we have some funds in case there is something that needs to be addressed immediately. That's kind of dire. We don't think that's the case, but we just want to be prepared for every circumstance. So our budget is fairly close to where it was last fiscal year on both expense and on the revenue side. Are there any specific questions? Because I'd be more than happy to dig in.
Yes, I see Council Member John Kides has his hand raised.
Thanks, Chairman. James, I've got some concerns about violations and ticketing. Sure. I know we've spent some time on this, and in the past it was addressed, and there was a warning ticket. I know you had another term for it. For some reason, it always escapes my mind, where instead of someone receiving a ticket for being over for whatever the case may be, they received a warning.
Yeah, the
And
courtesy citation program.
right. I just being kind of in the mix with parking, and especially with South Norwalk, it's pretty apparent that tickets and violations are just running rampant down there. And I mean, I'm sure you know in the time you've been doing this and in your past that, I mean, that there's some repercussions to that. And it's looking from these numbers, I mean, it looks like, violations are increasing. I wish I had like a 5-year of violation revenues. If you could, please, I'd love to see that as well. But can you give me like an update on what's going on with the courtesy passes, or excuse me, the warning tickets, let's say, and if anything is being done, to kind of be aware and conscious, and as far as violations and discouraging folks to coming and shopping or eating or whatever the case may be in these urban areas where paid parking is utilized.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a perfect question. And that's kind of the thing that jumps out at you right from the page, right? So when we finished the budget at the end of last month, obviously this jumped out to me as well. So I started looking into over the last few weeks. I just had a 5-hour meeting on it yesterday, really digging into the analytics of the violations. And part of that, we're also reaching out to other municipalities, not just in Connecticut, but nationwide, with some of the contacts that I have, to see if we're the only ones experiencing this trend. So we're waiting on getting some of that data back as well. Part of it is we always see a trend after a period of where we just kind of abolish the rules for a little while, like we did during COVID. We do see a certain trend come up where they just get used to not having the rules. So you tend to see a spike in the opposite direction when you come out of something like that. That's kind of the trend that we're seeing with some of the data that's trickling in so far. By no means do I think that's the be all end all, but I think that's one part of the pie. So my big project right now is to dig in. Where are we issuing the violations? What violations are we issuing? Look at the percentages. Really understand the enforcement staffing, the routes, and looking at it from the ground up and kind of reevaluating the entire enforcement solution.
I mean, I don't mean to cut you off, but I know you got a lot of ground to cover as far as finances are concerned due to COVID. And this is not my first rodeo with this. I mean, we've really fought hard for the courtesy program and the warning tickets. I mean, and just seeing the effects it has on local businesses. I mean, data is great and all, but I mean, I guess I'm asking where are we still offering those passes, or is it has that gone away? I mean, are we doing anything along those lines?
Yeah, so we're still off. We still have the courtesy citation program running. We're also looking at enhancing the courtesy citation program, but that's kind of dependent a little bit on the feature set that's available with our enforcement technology. We're looking to kind of see if there's ways to take the human element out of the courtesy citation program. Right now, it's a pretty manual process, but if we can build in, say, a kind of a random generator in our system that when it pings up as an expired meter, for example, the system automatically says, here's your courtesy citation. So that way it's another check and balance system that's in place, but then it also would fairly benefit everybody no matter what. So we're looking at ways to enhance that as well.
Right. I know there's been a changing of the guard, and I feel a lot of the progress we made as far as, I mean, you guys are doing your job. The parking authority is doing its job. Someone's in violation, you give them a ticket. I mean, it's very methodical. It's very, you know what I mean? It's robotic in a way. I mean, I get it, but I think I also don't want to lose that progress we made over the years with all of this. So, I mean, I'm just letting you guys know I'm going to make this like a priority for me moving forward. And I hope you guys will take that to heart to say, okay, maybe we need to, change our practices, because I could tell you firsthand ticketing in, our urban areas is through the roof right now. I mean,
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
30 seconds later, the person's got a ticket. I mean, it's insane right now. And I'm hearing I'm not one to say, oh, a constituent calls me, and when no constituent called me, I could tell you firsthand, people are upset. So I'm just just please take that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we don't want to generate our revenue from violations. We want to generate it from the meters and people coming to use the area. That's really where our priority is. You can see, we're forecasted pretty high through this fiscal year, but I fully expect to drop that number significantly next year. That's my goal, and that's exactly what I'm looking toward doing, which is why I'm already in that process now. Because
yeah, and during your data, reconnaissance, maybe you could look at, the amount of courtesy cards that were given. I'm sorry, I keep missing the term for it, but if you could maybe look back to the amount, because there was a system in place, for areas, and it would rotate. I mean, there was years spent on this. Maybe if you could just maybe try to track down that information, because it was working pretty well. And if, to your point of people not being informed that they now need to, pay, I think those warning tickets, if you will, were a good way to show people we are charging now. So, I mean, if you could please, take a look at that. I think this should be an item that should come to the planning committee as well and get some follow up. So I guess be prepared in a month or two to, bring something to us and discuss this further. And thank you, James.
Absolutely, be my pleasure.
All right, great.
May I ask you both a question?
Of course.
Go ahead. Yes.
John and I'm sorry, I just lost your name.
James.
Where are you? James, so sorry, James and John. You literally took the question that was in my head, and just wondering, when are these, again, for the lack of better words, applicable, these courtesy tickets? Because quite honest with you, in Wall Street, and I'm South Norwalk, obviously, it's 100% right, Rich, John, Council Keegan is saying, oh, not Keegan, sorry, Kitey's. But when are those applicable? Because really, I was at a dental office on Water Street, and the dentist paid for my ticket, and I still got a ticket. Like, they paid for my parking, and I still got a ticket. And they're like, we'll take care of it. But I'm just like, what makes those applicable to get a courtesy before you start getting tickets? Because that was a business I was in. So just wondering, because it's my first time hearing of the courtesy, and being a newer person, just wondering what makes those applicable.
Yeah, so it's right now it's a manual process. There's a schedule where they basically pick one day of the week and then one area, and then there's kind of a rotation. I don't know the exact schedule off the top of my head, so bear with me on that one.
Okay.
Then what they do is they randomly decide, they have X amount of courtesy citations that they plan on giving out, and then they just use that up until the end of the day, the enforcement officers. So it's just kind of it looks like a citation that goes on your windshield, and you get it, and it says, hey, just so you know, your meter was expired. This is not a citation. This is just a friendly reminder. Next time, please make sure, don't forget to pay your meter.
Is there, and this may be a little bit too extra, trust me, but it might be, really, because I'm this definitely new to, but when on your end of things, especially with a courtesy, because like, for example, my situation, and I understand it, but the license was put one number off.
Yeah.
So that's what made that happen, because the facility itself put a 4 instead of an 8. Yeah. There was no way for someone to see, oh, well, maybe that's just an error, and put like that courtesy, or no, not at all. They just look at it and it's like, no, you didn't pay, because it was literally a 1 number error. That's, I'm sure they called and clarified, but for the person in the car that actually got to see it, I told him like, hey, they paid, they did this already. He was like, well, just have them call. But was there any way for him to see that that was an error?
Not until after the citation's actually printed, and we do that for anonymity purposes, right? So it comes up,
okay,
it
get it.
pings, it says it's expired. You fill out the citation, it prints it out, then the plate number and all that is on there, and that's kind of how the process goes.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, I thank you
we want to
because
try and take
I'm
the
new to
human
that.
element.
I'm new to that.
Yeah, that's all right. We want to try and take the human element out of it as much as possible. That way, it has the fairness optics of it.
Councilmember
Thank you very much.
David.
You're welcome.
Councilmember David Hoofman.
Thank you, Chairman. James, a question. If you're looking at gathering some data, I'd love to get some data on the numbers of enforcement officers that you have out there, what the shift times are, what their routes are, all of those types of things. Because what I represent the Wall Street area, and there's a lot of issues that go on down there with parking, as I am sure you're well aware of. And one of the biggest issues is, and I've watched this happen, the enforcement officers sort of lay in wait down there. They're there all the time. They're parked around the corner on Isaac Street, and a car pulls up and suddenly the enforcement officer is there. And I'm wondering what his route is, because I've seen them just parked over in that area. And this has been an ongoing complaint down in the Wall Street area from a number of business owners and constituents who frequent that area. And I'm just curious to know what their route is, how many officers you have on at given times of the day. Are there more at peak times? Are there less at other times? Because it goes to, frankly, when I see a number like that, your forecast violations 1.5 million, that rings. You look at a document like that and people think you are violation heavy. And I know what you're saying, that you're looking at pulling those things back and all of that, but that makes it seem as though you're violation driven. And that's a concern. I think it's a concern that Councilman Keity's voiced and Councilperson Revolus as well. So I'd be interested in seeing that data as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole project that I'm in the middle of going through as we speak. Understanding, do we have the routes? I do know right now we have, during the day, we have 4 enforcement officers on for the day shift, and that drops to 3 for the evening shift. As far as the routes, that's probably something that we can, handle offline or meet to discuss and not take up everyone's time here, because that's a much longer and deeper conversation. But
that'd be fine.
Yeah, we're putting together all of that right now to get a full understanding from the ground up of how the enforcement process is working, and then we're going to reevaluate and revamp the entire thing.
Councilmember Jen McMurray.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to dovetail off of what Councilmember Hoovelman said. A few weeks ago, I had actually received communications from a constituent who had been parking on Isaacs for an event that was down there, and there was a signage issue. They were ticketed. Several people were ticketed on Isaac Street because there was a cardboard sign that said no parking. So I'm just wondering, I don't know if you can speak to that specific instance, because I never did hear back on what happened with that, but there were several tickets issued. I mean, signage is super important, and being transparent and clear on where you can and can't park is important. And I think we can all agree a cardboard sign duct taped to a barrier or a wall is not the correct signage, and therefore should probably not be ticketed.
I couldn't agree with you more. And you actually are asking a question I can answer with very 100% accuracy. Isaac Street had previously we had no parking signs that were on the chain link fence there along the building that was under construction. Those signs were disappearing. So what we just did at the end of last week is we went and put in actual full sign stanchions with no parking signs there along that to solve that problem going forward. So it's permanent signage that's in that area now. And that's also something that's come up during our citation hearings. I personally sit in on all citation hearings. That way I can get a good understanding of where the pain points are, where are the things that are coming up multiple times. Is there a signage issue? That way we can address it and handle it as quickly as possible when those come up. Just last citation hearing that we ran into a sign issue on Merwin, and that issue was solved the next day. So we're really putting an emphasis on seeing these issues, understanding what they are in the community, and getting out and solving them as quickly as possible.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Councilmember Nora Najelski-Eichner.
And I don't want to take long. I know it's late, but to all these points and to the point that we, both want to encourage turnover, but we also really want to encourage people to be coming down to these business areas. Is there some kind of way that we could do a monthly pass like we do for the train stations, where, again, I don't even know the parameters of this, but some way of, you pay, $30 up front and you can park in the city for 2 hours anywhere. And maybe it gets, an additional 15-minute grace period where you're not going to get ticketed. As the technology gets better, as we're doing more and more of this via, people signing up for programs in their car, everything being done electronically. I just wonder if there's some way that we could make this a little bit less onerous, particularly again for the local folks who go here all the time, who we really want to encourage to have, to go to Wall Street, to go to Sono and be excited about it and not be like, oh God, if I go, I'm going to get, I'm going to have trouble with parking. Just something to put out there for long-term thinking. Can we get a little more creative in ways that, get maybe more upfront revenue from a monthly pass and therefore decrease our reliance on violations a little bit?
So we're looking at all of those options, right? Getting creative and getting some of that new technology on board. And part of what's in our expense in our budget is looking at like the 15-minute spaces, for example, right? Every business wants a free 15-minute space in front of their place. And that's totally understandable. I absolutely get that. But there's only so many spaces to go around, right? So we're actually looking at a feature where we can turn every space into a 15-minute space if you need it. So we would actually, abolish the 15-minute spaces that are out in the field now. And when you come up to a meter, you have two options. You can purchase parking time, or you can receive a free 15 minutes based on your plate number. And then there's fail safes where we can restrict that to different zones in the city or the city altogether, so it can't be abused. That's just one feature that we're looking at that's really taking the charge with creativity, hopefully here in the next fiscal year. But that's just one option of many that we're looking at. We're also reaching out to some of my contacts in other cities and municipalities to really see what they're doing that's outside the box, that might not be done anywhere else, and where they're having success, and maybe is that something we want to implement here. So there's a lot of new options that have really come out over the last year and a half, that we're going to start sinking our teeth into to make parking comfortable and easy to understand and quick. If you're leaving Norwalk and you're thinking about your parking experience, chances are it was a bad parking experience, right? So we're going to do our best to make sure when you leave, you're not even thinking about parking because it was so easy and simple.
Awesome. I thank you. I'm really excited to hear that you're thinking about it. That sounds like some great, I'm fascinated by this 15-minute option. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Councilmember Diana Revolus.
And just to add, thank you, Chair. Our question is, do we have also an increase of thoughts of more free handicap spaces, in particularly down in South Norwalk, where our restaurants are, or even where I was, I'll bring it back to Water Street. There are handicap, there is, but if you go further down the road, there's not, right? Like if you're near that theater, there's some, but what if I have to go down the street where like the dentist's office or the barber shop was, there's none. So wondering if we're thinking about that, can we increase the handicap spaces and their availability and them being free?
Sure. So I don't want to speak on this too much because it's not quite in my area expertise and wheelhouse.
Okay.
But I do know that TMP in their redevelopment projects, I know, you know, the Wall Street redevelopment that they're looking at, they are evaluating all of that, including the expansion of handicap parking. And what, you know, we have to have a good understanding of the federal and state ordinances when it comes to parking to make sure, when it comes to handicap parking, excuse me, to make sure that we're following all of those guidelines as well. But that's always part of their vision in all of the projects that they work on.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, James, do you have more to add to the presentation?
I don't. I think that about covers it. No, the one last thing actually I will add under expenses is, you know, we are also looking at, you know, there's the Wall Street redevelopment project that's coming up. So in conjunction with that, we're trying to do a Yankee Doodle garage facade enhancement. So part of that is going to be in our expenses for next fiscal year. Hopefully, as long, you know, it's there. So hopefully the project can move quick enough. But we are meeting with with all the stakeholders in the Wall Street area. I've met with them and we have a full parking meeting coming up, I believe, next month to just discuss parking in general in the Wall Street area. And I'm going to sit down, listen to all their concerns. Again, because I'm fairly new here in the city. So really getting an understanding of the history and the concerns that'll allow us to and then present the garage facade enhancement and get their input on how they'd like it to look and really make it a nice, beautiful beacon of the Wall Street area that people are comfortable using and it's easy to find and easy to use. Great. And that's all I've got.
Yeah, one question, James, that I have, I'm looking at the spreadsheet that the schedule that you're sharing and I'm seeing your system revenues and your expenses and the difference between the two. It appears that the difference is going into a fund balance and you're showing and that's for your annual contribution. Do you have a running total fund balance, or is that the total amount that's in the fund balance, the 264,000?
I believe we have a running fund balance somewhere in the vicinity of 2.7 million. But I am just starting to sink my teeth into that portion of the parking authority and get a real full grasp and understanding. So I believe we're right at about 2.7. I haven't seen the ledger, so I'm not sure, you know, where we were pre-COVID, how we did through COVID, and where we came out of COVID. So that's kind of all I know in that regard at this time.
I could clarify a little bit.
Thank you, Henry.
I really think that line item is mislabeled. It should be surplus or deficit for the year. And yes, as an enterprise fund, they do have a fund balance, but this really would be labeled when it's positive. It's an increase to the fund balance because it's a surplus. And actual 21, there was a loss, a deficit of 1.15 million, and that decreased the fund balance.
Thank you, Henry. I appreciate that. And I have made that note and I'll make sure to get that changed in our templates. Thank you.
That was kind of concerning because I saw the term fund balance as if that was a running total or a contribution to the fund balance. But now, thank you for the clarification, Henry, that's just showing the current year surplus. But it would be nice to see what the running fund balance is if you have one, and it appears that you do.
Yes, agreed.
Okay, good. Thank you. If you could, if you have no further, yeah, so you can stop sharing. So are there any other questions or comments relating to the Parking Authority's budget as revised? Yes, Council Member Nora Najelski-Eichner.
I'm so sorry. I know that it's late, but is there a cap to the amount of balance that you keep? I mean, I recognize how helpful it was to have a running or to have a fund balance, you know, in COVID, but is there a certain point at which excess monies get returned to the city, or does that balance just accumulate, you know, to whatever sort of future point?
I do not know if there's a cap. I don't believe so. And you know, with the little bit I know about the history of the parking authority, I'm not sure we've ever experienced that. I knew they do a very good job of putting the money back into their facilities, into the technology, and into the feature sets that they offer. But I'm not sure if there is a cap and what that would be and what happens when we get there.
I can comment again. As an enterprise fund is a fund that looks like a business where they're charging user fees, and the goal is to have a break even every year. So you're supposed to charge the fees such that you could cover all your expenses. And included in those expenses are the debt service. So you're borrowing money for the reinvestment for capital projects. The debt service is part of your expenses operationally every year. And then you should be setting rates such that you break even. But obviously there are a lot of variables. How many people are coming to the parking lot? How much are they paying, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously we would prefer a surplus rather than a deficit. But if there are sustained fund balances, then the rates should be adjusted so that the users pay less and that fund balance is burned off, because obviously it means that you charge too much historically. So if you have 1 year, there's a surplus, a little bit of a negative, that's fine. But if every year you're increasing your fund balance with a surplus, that means that you're charging too much to all the users.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. With that, I'll call for the question to vote on the Parking Authority's budget. All those in favor show by the raise of hand.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay, it is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, James. And
thank you very much, everybody.
There's a couple of pieces of information that hopefully you'll follow up on and share with us.
Yes, absolutely. Hopefully by the end of next week, I should be able to get some stuff together.
Great, appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Moving on to the next item in the agenda, which is to discuss and approve the fiscal year 2022-2023 Water Pollution Authority budget. Do we have a motion? Council Member Diana Revelous, thank you. And we have with us our Chief of Public Works Operations, Anthony Carr, and also our Senior Environmental Engineer from the WPCA, Ralph Kolb, to take us through the budget. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for your patience.
Very welcome, Mr. Chairman. We'll try to keep the budget short, since we've been before your committee number of years since I've been here, 3 seasons now. So nothing really has changed, and the things that have changed we'll highlight to give context as we walk through the presentation. But the Water Pollution Control Authority is an enterprise fund, and as the CFO noted earlier, this is basically a self-supporting government fund that provides, in some cases, goods, but in this case, a service to the public for a fee. And that fee is the sewer use fee that we assess to residential and commercial users. So our wastewater system, at a high level, for those who may be new to the committee or to the council, myself and Mr. Kolb have brought oversight over an 18 million gallon a day wastewater treatment plant. There's 22 sanitary sewer pump stations throughout the city, and approximately 205 miles of sanitary sewer. That's basically an overview of our system. You have the wastewater treatment plant. The sewage gets to the plant through pipes that are underground. Most of these pipes are gravity. Other pipes are not. They employ the use of a pump at various locations in the city, like Old Trolley Way, 5 Mile Pump Station, Karen Drive, just name a few of them, Woodward Park, Woodward Avenue. So there's a number of pump stations throughout the city that help get the sewage in the areas where it can't be delivered to the treatment plant via gravity. So I just want to kind of hit the highlights, Mr. Chairman, of this last fiscal year budget. Again, our goal is to offset our expenses with revenue and then have what's called a replacement reserve, where we could pay capital projects partially or wholly with cash, depending on a number of variables. So in the past, one of the major highlights for last year, but in the past, WPCA implemented a dynamic financial model, which was a bit outdated, but it was a planning tool to prepare current and future capital and operating budgets, right? So what this dynamic model had done, and what we had asked our one of our consultants to do, is to revamp the model. Woodland and Current Engineering put on a presentation for the WPCA board, I believe at the, I think it was the March, Ralph, was it the March 21st meeting?
It was the February.
Sorry, February. Excuse me. Sorry, a little bit late. You got me there. The late February meeting, the Woodland and Current had made a presentation. Myself and Ralph attended the meeting with Mr. Torrey, and basically the presentation explained what this dynamic model does. So what the dynamic model does, it takes many variables, and I know it's late, so I'm going to keep it very high level. They use a fancy technical term called a sensitivity analysis, but the layman's term, or the more common term, is a what if analysis. So basically you have a number of variables in the pot, right? And you look at a desired outcome, right? So if we want to know, let's say, what the sewer rate increase should be, which was recently voted on March 21st by the WPCA Board of Directors for 4% rate increase, the question would say, okay, you work backwards. Well, if we want to maintain a 4% rate increase, what variables can we change that would accomplish a number of other tasks or other inputs in the program or in the model? And those inputs could be the residential sewer use fee, the commercial sewer use fee, how much we want to maintain as an operating reserve, which we had agreed on with the CFO and with others, other professionals, that we agreed that a 90-day operating budget supply, or 25% a quarter of the year, would be sufficient, which of that $18.6 million, 25% is roughly $4.5 million. So we felt very comfortable, given the financial health of the WPCA, that a 25% operating reserve would be perfectly fine to carry us through any catastrophic events, and or be suffice to replenish our cash reserve, which we would then incorporate into capital projects. So instead of the CFO having to go and borrow the full amount for bonding, we would be able to give offset either the full or partial expense of the capital project with cash. So, and those capital projects are rehabilitation and improvements to our collection system, and also our wastewater treatment plant. So this model takes into account basically existing and future debt, right? Capital debt, which is also known as debt service, how much money we have to pay to borrow money now at whatever rate that we're at currently. I think it's a little over 2%, but that's what we assumed in our model. The capital projects that we're going to be paying cash for in out years. So this financial model looks at a 5-year look ahead. And as the CFO had guided us correctly, in addition to our financial experts who helped us with this model, the forecast and these plans and these tools, they forecast out more than 5 years, but really things can change economically, in a significant manner between years 3 and 5, right? So they're just a tool for now and for the upcoming years, but as you go out, they become a little bit less reliable, and that's when you revamp and refresh these models and these tools. So rather than arbitrarily or using an educated guess to increase the sewer rates, we asked Woodland and Current to develop this financial model, or to revamp our old model, which was done by a previous consultant called Red Oak. And give us a new model and help us with the rate increase and help guide us with, if we wanted a 4% increase, what would a 5% increase look like? How does that change all the other variables? So they're all changing at the same time. So the most important variables that we came out of that meeting with and with the model was, okay, 25% cash reserve, 90 days, enough to cover our existing and current, our existing and future planned capital debt, and maintaining that replacement reserve. So there was, again, a lot of variables. We could have not increased the rates at all, but then what would happen on the back end is if you're not increasing sewer rates now, based on the future work and the plan work and keeping the lights on, which is your operating budget, and the capital improvements in the future, your increase would be astronomically higher in the future. So we wanted to kind of keep a level swing or a delta for the sewer rate increase. So again, this model helped guide the WPCA and the finance department with a number of inputs that are very complicated to get into in this meeting right now. But it basically took all our bond schedules, all the debt that we have to pay off, everything from the comptroller's office, the CFO, everybody was fantastic in giving us the information. We gave it to the consultant. They put it into this master spreadsheet that basically, if you change one cell, 50 other cells change or more. So we were able to see, okay, 4% is a healthy increase. It's not too high, it's not too low, and it accomplishes our financial objectives, which was, again, that 25% reserve, that contingency. It pays off the debt services based on existing and future capital projects, and it gives us a little bit extra to put basically down and give to the CFO so that he could have to bond for less. So that's really in a nutshell what the dynamic model does. We would be happy in the future to have Woodard and Curran present this to the Finance and Claims Committee, because I think it's kind of late now and to go get any more technical than I already have. But I think it'd be important. A few members of the Common Council have seen it, the ones that sit on the WPCA board, but I think it's important that the Finance and Claims Committee does see this at some point. So, Mr. Chairman, in the future, we will definitely be placing this on your agenda, and hopefully you and your committee would welcome a presentation from the consultant.
Absolutely.
Could I make a comment, please?
Yes.
Yes.
I reviewed this model extensively with the consultant. Very sophisticated and is very valuable tool. So it's in essence linking the operations of the WPCA with the financial requirements. And in the short term, it helps evaluate how to set rates. But at the same time, like you mentioned, you want to establish a buffer for unforeseen circumstances. And at the same time, it helps me in working with the capital markets that says, how much money does the WPCA have to borrow, when, what size? So it's a model that is comprehensive. And the key here is that, like most models, there are many, many assumptions that are built in. So part of the trick of working with a model is, as you work with it over time, you look at your errors. We were high here, we were low here. Inflation is taking off and we didn't incorporate that. And over time, you develop a confidence level on many of the inputs that you feel very comfortable with certain forecasts and less comfortable with others. And then you tweak it every year when you use it. And that's how we get better accuracy. We make sure that the rates are appropriate for users, but at the same time, keeping that cash reserve and making sure that the capital projections to borrow from the markets is as accurate a forecast as we can hope for.
Thank you, Henry. And Mr. Chairman, that was probably one of the biggest highlights of the fiscal year was the implementation of that financial model. And again, we worked with the CFO and Ralph and everybody in the finance department. But initially we said, we want to develop a tool that gives us the best information possible and makes us assist us with making these smart financial choices. And it's hard when you have all these different variables going on to try to track it on paper or to talk about it or to even have a little light Excel spreadsheet. Like Henry said, there's so many different functions and changes that when you start looking at the debt service, and when you start looking at future capital projects, and when you start looking at your operating expenses, how does the operating tie to the capital, and how does that tie to the reserve that you want to maintain? It gets very convoluted, but again, the model simplifies it for the end user, which is the city. And obviously, Henry knows this like the back of his hand. But for us engineers, who sometimes try to play financial advisors, we want to avoid getting ourselves into trouble. So we turn to the experts to help guide us through that and make those smart decisions. So the dynamic model was a big highlight. The other highlight was that Suez officially merged. Suez being, for those who don't know, Suez is our contract operator who basically handles the O&M, the operations and maintenance of our wastewater treatment plant, and also our collection system. And our collection system being defined as our manholes and pipes and those pump stations I was telling you about, the vaults, the structures, everything in the road and the right of way, or even on our property that serves the sanitary sewer from the customer to the plant. They merged with Veolia on March 17th, 2022. The city and Veolia have had a seamless relationship. Again, it's really the same people that were there as Suez, just a different name. We made a lot of significant progress in many areas. For example, in 2021, the wastewater treatment plant achieved its second lowest nitrogen discharge in history. Nitrogen is, as we know, an element, but it's could we also look at it as a pollutant, and that's measured in pounds per day. So the more nitrogen that we remove prior to discharging our daily flows to the Norwalk River, the more nitrogen that we can remove, the better for the aquatic life and the better for the environment. So less nitrogen is desirable. And again, we've reached our second lowest goal, second lowest discharge, I should say, in 2021. So that partnership between formerly Suez and now Veolia is going exceptionally well. Also in January of this year, the WPCA board executed its first contract amendment with Suez, which was really generated by the Suez-Veolia merger. We increased the total number of staffing in Veolia to 27. This contract amendment also allowed the WPCA to request and ask Veolia to purchase a second jet vac truck. So those are the big trucks that you basically see with the jetters and the nozzles in the front. They have the boom and the arm. They're probably the heaviest and biggest piece of equipment that any public works or WPCA agency will own. They're extremely heavy, and you have to be really careful where you drive them, especially if the ground is wet or soft. I've seen one get stuck, and it's very hard to have it moved out and towed out. So the jet vac truck helps us clean our system. Obviously, the more trucks that we have, adding a second one, hopefully a third one in the future, helps us remove grease, sediment, fats, buildup from the sanitary sewer lines, which gives the sewer pipe more capacity, and it also reduces the chance of sanitary sewer overflows from the pipe to the ground surface. We've also included 7 additional smart manhole covers. So basically, these are sensors that go on the bottom side of the lid that you see at the ground in the pavement, the circular lid for a sanitary sewer manhole. These sensors go on the opposite side of the manhole, so on the inside, and it basically shoots a ray down, or it has like a level sensor in it that it measures the depth and the flow of the sewage inside the pipe all the way down at the bottom of the manhole, whether it's 10 feet, 20 feet, whatever the depth is. And it gives us an early indication if, 1, there's a problem, 2, it watches trends. And those trends could be linked to a lot of different things, whether it's rainfall, whether it's development, et cetera. So we have 7 of those, and we are planning to purchase more. Not every manhole is going to be a smart cover, but we know our critical areas, those critical areas being known hotspots. Critical areas are also where we have the pipes become bigger, also known as interceptors or trunk lines. So, in a sanitary sewer system, you have smaller and smaller pipes, but they get bigger as they combine. So there's typically a point where if a pipe is more than 2 feet or 3 feet wide, that's typically known as an interceptor. So you want to watch those pipes and make sure those are flowing properly. So we do have smart covers there, and we plan on purchasing more. And before I turn it over to Ralph, I do have to say that, and I've said this to the WPCA board, and I think I've said it before to the Finance and Claims Committee, you're in excellent hands with Mr. Kolb. I attribute, besides the finance department and the CFO keeping us honest and giving us the guidance that we need to financially to run a healthy financial institution at WPCA. Ralph is on it. You don't get much better than him. He's been here for quite a long time, and he knows every aspect of the technical piece. He understands the financial piece. He's very good at dealing with the public and solving problems. And like I said, we're not here. We're not in a good situation or in a good spot just because of luck and a prayer. It's because of the talent and the foresight and really the amount of effort and dedication that Ralph and his staff and the operations staff put forward every day. So it's not by coincidence that we're here running through a very healthy budget and explaining all these good things that we're doing. So Ralph, I figure this is a good point to turn over to you. There might be some other several key items in the operating budget that you want to highlight for the committee and for the chairman, maybe for the CFO as well. So I'll turn it over to you, Ralph.
Thank you, Chief Carr. Like Anthony said earlier, my name's Ralph Kolb. I'm the Senior Environmental Engineer for the Norwalk WPCA, and it does take a team. It's a team of Veolia, WPCA, and other city departments. Like mentioned earlier, with the financial model, we're trying to smooth it for our customers. So that way they don't have a price shock from year in to year out, depending on capital or operating needs. So we're looking at that 4 to 5% range, smoothing that out over the next 5 years. So every year's, it's that 4 or 5% range versus having 2% and then 8% or 10% down to 2%. So we're trying to avoid that. And that's what the model does. With that 4% in mind, the increase for residential units is $15 per unit. For the commercial flat rate, it's $21 increase. And for consumption, it's 38 cents per 1,000 gallons of an increase. On the revenue side of our budget, Norwalk will be receiving nitrogen credits. We don't know what the credit price will be. The state has not issued that paperwork, but we anticipate, based on past numbers, to collect about $100,000 in revenue. The revenues budget, again, there is a line item for reimbursement of WPCA support services that's billed to the city of Norwalk. That amounts around $144,000. What that is my salary, some of my staff. There's a portion of that we provide additional services not related to WPCA or the wastewater side. It's specifically more stormwater related. Plus, we do IPP billing. We also, Suez actually maintains 3 stormwater pump stations for the city. So those fees are back billed to the city of Norwalk. Now, looking on the expenditure side, some items to point out. One is our O&M fee. It's increased primarily due to inflation. We saw over a 5% increase in the inflation rate for CPI and ECI for the Veolia contract. Plus, it includes the amendment number 1 increase to our budget. Second is the city bills the Norwalk WPCA for all its services that it provides the WPCA. For example, IT department, for software, for computers, phones, etc. Our tax department, finance department, everybody has involvement. WPCA develops the rates, and we identify what fees to charge on each property, but the tax assessor assembles it, gives it to the tax collector to include on the tax bills. In addition to that, debt service payments have increased due to bond funding of ongoing capital improvement projects. Basically, WPCA has grouped capital improvement projects into 3 groups: wastewater projects, pump station projects, and collection system projects. And currently, we have projects involved in each of those categories, and we'll have continued projects in the future in all 3 of those categories. I guess last thing is, does anybody have any questions?
Any questions or comments? Okay. I can say that I've learned everything I know about fog from Ralph, which is fats, oils, and greases. So I'll never forget that. So if there's No questions or comments, and there's a motion on the floor. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the budget show by a raise of hand or
Yes.
verbal aye. Yes.
Aye.
Thank you. It is unanimous. Thank you. We'll move this on to the yeah, it'll go to the full council for approval on Tuesday, April 26th. It's getting late.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, and Henry and Ralph. Thank you very much, and everybody enjoy your holiday, whichever religious holiday you celebrate or not, even if it's just with friends and family. Stay safe.
Great. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Same to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Take care.
Much appreciated.
Okay, we have 2 items remaining. The next item is the adoption of the tentative fiscal year 2022-2023 operating budget. I will say that the council approved the cap in the February timeframe, and through all of the deliberations that the BET went through, they are not requesting an increase in the cap. So the cap that we approved back in February remains in place. So with that, I will turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Henry Dakowitz, for further comments on the operating budget.
Thank you, Chairman. It is late, and I think we've all seen these numbers before. So the council had a cap of $414.2 million. The BET then shifted money around, but in total, they did not exceed the cap. The reason their total is a little bit less than the council cap, it's a little bit less by $24,000. The BET wanted to fund certain items, and we had 2 sources of funding to use without increasing the cap. One was the mayor's requested 0.5% reduction that he asked each department to provide. And the other was we offset those increases by a reduction in the contingency budget. The fire department generated more than 0.5% that they were asked by $24,000. That is why the total under the council cap is 414.2 million. And under the BET, it's 414.175. So that's the only difference there. We then go below the line into the second spreadsheet, and we show the net tax levy is 367 million. So we go from 414 million, we add 8.7 million that we need to raise for the tax adjustments, such as the elderly tax relief program, tax appeals, and for the reserve for uncollected tax bills. So yes, we're spending 414 million, but we need to raise more than that, total of 422.9 million, to offset some of those credits where we're not going to collect the money. That's called the gross tax levy. But then we look at our revenues. And in this year's budget, we have 5.6 million in other tax revenue. That's back tax collection and supplemental auto. And then we have non-tax revenue of 45.8 million. That's composed primarily of 26.8 million intergovernmental, which is mostly revenues from the state grants, 10.3 million, which are the fees and receipts of the various departments. And so that's 45.8. And then the third component this year is a drawdown from the rainy day fund of $4 million. So when you add up the 5.6, the 45.8, and the 4 million, That's a total of 55.4 million in revenue. So the gross tax levy, 422.9, gets reduced by our expected revenue, and we end up with a net tax levy of $367.5 million. We then look at the grand list to get the mill rate. The average mill rate for the city for the fiscal year 2023 budget is 24.688 compared to 23.904 the prior year, an increase of 0.784 mils, 3.28%. When we divide by the average, the median home value in the fourth taxing district, $275,550, we get the average tax bill for the whole city of $6,803 compared to $6,587 last year, an increase of $216 or 3.28%. The third chart shows how those numbers get allocated district by district. So we start with a core allocation, which this year came out to 21.6809 mils. The sixth district does not get fire services, fire protection from the city. So we isolate the costs of the fire department and fire services, and we allocate them to the 5 districts. It came out to 2.7447 mils. Garbage is only offered for the 1st through 4th districts, 0.1189 mils, and lighting is only provided to the 4th and 5th districts, 0.1479. The 6th district asks us to bill their residents for the services that they provide, and that comes in at 1.2540. So the total, first, second, and third are identical, 24.5445. Fourth is 24.6924. Fifth, 24.5735. Sixth, 22.939. The 10th district is the auto, 30.467. And right underneath, you could see the changes both in mil and in percentages from last year. We then take the median home value within each district rather than an average for the whole city, and we get an average bill for each district, ranging from the 2nd district is 5,582 up to the 6th district of 17,539. And we then show the changes in dollars and in percent. So this is the tentative approved budget.
Thank you, Henry. Councilmember John Kides.
Thanks, Greg. Henry, I haven't been able to get a straight answer on this question. I was hoping you could help me with it. Did Recreation and Parks receive 2 new employees?
Yes, there were several employees added to Parks and Rec. And then in addition, at a last go round, I believe 2 more people were added, and the new Parks and Rec commissioner paid for them by reducing other line items in the budget. So those last 2 were budget neutral, and the 1 or 2 others were paid for as increases in this year's budget.
Yeah, there seemed to be confusion even amongst the director of Recreation and Parks on all of that. So you're saying that they reduced their operating expenses in order to pay for these 2 additional employees?
There was, and I don't have those numbers in front of me, which show head count and payroll. So I apologize. They added 1 or 2 people that were approved in the budget by the mayor.
1 or 2.
Spending. I just don't have that in front of me. I don't know whether 1 was filling a vacancy, but I believe 1 was a new position that was approved. In addition, at a very late moment, Robert wanted 2 more people. And he said, when I was in Seattle, the way we did this is it's revenue neutral. And The mayor approved that. So those final two people, he had a budget line item for their salaries, and he reduced other line items in his budget to make it revenue neutral.
Yeah,
If I can comment to that, I'm looking at the BET schedule. Recreation and Parks requested to add a new electrician, and to cover the electrician, cuts were made in other areas. So as Henry indicated, it would be budget neutral for a new electrician. And they also requested to add a new Recs and Park supervisor. Cuts were made in other areas to make that budget neutral. And they had requested 2 additional new people. One was approved at an amount of $162,000.
Excuse me, Greg. So that additional employee was approved for $162,000.
I think
that's correct.
it was 2 people. 162,000 sounds high for one person.
Yeah.
It says, I'll show you the schedule, but it says requested to add 2 people, only 1 approved. Maybe the other person was already in the budget, so maybe this was an addition.
Maybe one was filling a vacancy. One
Right.
was the 160 pays for both of them.
Right.
Yeah, hence the confusion and not getting a straight answer, because even our director of recreation and parks is confused about it. So that that makes me a little suspicious on what's actually going on here. Yeah, hopefully by the next council meeting we've got more clarity, because like I said, even Roberts doesn't know if he's getting that second employee.
We've reconciled everything in the budget department. We've reconciled all the numbers to both the council cap and to the BET, and we've reconciled the head count and the salary line for every department. And we reconcile the salary line of every department to the actual name-by-name head count. So that will be coming out shortly.
Okay, so with that head count, Henry, you've got 3 additional employees or 4 additional employees?
I'm sorry, I'm on vacation technically. Okay. Sorry, Tom Ellis is the budget director. He's been working on that. I have looked it over. We have reconciled to the dollar, and we will be publishing that as we do every year.
Yeah, I guess I'm not understanding your answer there. I know it's late. We all been here a while, but I guess my question is, you had mentioned electrician, a supervisor, an additional position, but that amount for that, the 2 positions that, the additional, the 4th employee, I guess that's where I'm a little confused there. I mean, it sounds like $162,000 would be enough to pay for 2 employees. So I'm just looking for a yes or no, I guess. I mean,
I understand you're looking for a yes or no, but I have my detailed budget materials back in the office. I didn't take it with me for vacation. So next week, on Tuesday, when I return, I'll be glad to send you a note and explain it in detail.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments relating to the operating budget? Yes, Councilmember David Hooverman.
Thank you, Chairman. Just real quick, Henry, this was a question got asked earlier also, that when you put a line item for a new full-time employee, does that include the benefits? So that when you say that $162,000 number that Chairman Burnett was talking about, that it said just one, would that be including the benefits for that?
It depends. If you're filling a vacancy, we probably have the benefits covered already in the benefits side. But if it's an ad and a new position, generally the request includes a percentage for benefits.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
One question that I had, Henry, as it relates to the tax levy. The levy in 2021 was 351. Then in 2022, it went up to 357, and now in 2023, it's going to be 367. Any concerns with that increasing levy? It seems like quite a bit of a jump from 353 to 367.
Well, again, going from the gross to the net tax levy, the first factor is our expenditures. So they're going up.
Okay.
Okay. Then you have those credits, which are pretty constant, and our reserve for uncollected taxes. If you recall, we were cautious going into COVID because we weren't sure we were going to collect our normal 98.5, 98.6% of taxes. It held up during COVID. We're back to 98.6%. So that's not a problem. But when you start getting to the revenue, it depends on intergovernmental revenues. We did have an increase in the revenues because we are getting $4 million more per year in pilots because the state changed the formulas. That should hit this year, and we budgeted it for next year. Last year, we included $13 million of ARPA funds, if you recall, so that we wouldn't have a significant increase in the actual levies for the mill rates and the average tax bill. This year, we only included $7 million. We said we can't go all the way to zero, but we're going to go halfway. So that might be the major difference in why that moved up a little bit more. And next year, when the 7 goes to 0, that'll probably go up again.
Councilmember David Hooverman.
Yeah, Henry, a question on the non-tax revenue. I noticed you had the 22 budget at 47.9, almost 48 million, and now we're projecting to be down. What's causing that downward projection?
Well, if you look at intergovernmental,
Is that it's intergovernmental?
intergovernmental is where we put those pilot funds and the ARPA funds. So what happened is the ARPA funds went down from 13 to 7. So they went down by 6. And the pilot revenues went up by $4 million. So that's a net. We went from 28.8 to 26.6. So that was $2 million of difference. That was probably the most significant one on the non-tax revenue. The other thing is, in next year's budget, we're including a $4 million drawdown from the rainy day fund, which we didn't have last year. So that's the $6 million difference.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other additional comments or questions related to the tentative operating budget? Okay, hearing and seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of this motion, show by a sign of raising your hand or yes or aye.
Aye.
All those opposed have the same right. Any abstentions?
Yes, I'm abstaining.
Okay, so we have 1 abstention. So the motion passed, and we'll move the tentative operating budget to the full council on the 26th for approval. Again, there's no request to increase the cap at this point. All right, that moves us on to the final item on the agenda, which is the appointment of the auditors to fiscal year, appointment of auditors to audit fiscal year 2022. And Henry will lead us in that discussion.
Thank you. Very quickly, there's an April 4th memo, which I issued to the chairman of the Board of Estimate. We had an RFP several years ago, and we awarded the audit to Bloom Shapiro, which has merged into the national firm Clifton Larson Allen. They've already performed 2 audits in a superlative manner. The upcoming the audit of fiscal year 22, which will be conducted in fiscal year 23, is the 3rd year of their contract according to the agreement and the successful bid at the RFP. This coming year would be a fee of $99,000. So we are requesting their reappointment.
Any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of moving this item forward?
Yes.
I'm sorry, did I ask for a motion on this? I don't think I did. So let me go back a second. Do we have a motion to approve the appointment of, thank you, Council Member Diane Revolus approves the motion of the appointment of the auditors to audit the fiscal year 2022. Calling for the question, all those in favor show by the sign of aye, raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Or verbal. Okay, thank you. It's unanimous. So that motion is approved and we'll move that to the full council. At this point, before we call for adjournment, I wish everyone a great holiday weekend with you and your families, whichever way you celebrate. And thank you for your time, your diligence, your patience, your super great questions and involvement. All those good things. We had a lot of work, and but a lot of good things for the city in terms of moving these ARPA funds forward. So thank you for your commitment to that. So with that, do we
Motion
have,
to adjourn.
oh boy, I couldn't even get it out. All those in favor show by the sign of raising your hand or verbally. Yes.
Aye.
Okay, great. Well, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest.
Have a good one, guys.